The scene opens in a prison interview room. A young female convict, Jung Hao-yu, sits across from a lady reporter who is setting up her recorder. The reporter thanks Hao-yu for agreeing to the interview, saying that it's really important for the documentary she's working on. She mentions that, as an ordinary person who has never been involved in scandals or crimes, it's pretty rare for someone like Hao-yu to end up committing murder. The reporter adds that besides discussing the case, she's also interested in hearing more about Hao-yu's life story. She wants to understand how someone like Hao-yu found herself in this situation. The reporter tells Hao-yu not to worry about time, reassuring her that she can take all the time she needs to share her story. Hao-yu looks up slowly, thinking about where to start. She hesitates and then asks the reporter for some guidance on where to begin. After a brief pause, the reporter suggests starting with Mr. Kang Seo, noting that they were in a relationship for about 10 years. Hao-yu nods in agreement. The reporter, curious, asks about their relationship, assuming it must have been comfortable given how long they were together. But Hao-yu admits that they had a lot of issues, because they were the same age and often ended up hurting each other. The reporter looks surprised by this. After a moment of silence, Hao-yu decides she knows exactly where to begin her story. In a flashback, Hao-yu recalls the summer when she was 20 years old, the time she decided to leave home. She remembers buying an expensive computer for her brother, despite her mom repeatedly telling her not to. Her mom would often come home drunk, and her older brother, who should have been setting a good example, only looked after himself until the last minute. Hao-yu could only attend college on the condition that she'd move out once her full scholarship was confirmed. She thinks about how, over time, things that didn't fit in their rundown house kept piling up, making the place feel even more cramped. She often finds herself thinking that, at this rate, she'll end up as a beggar. That thought used to cross her mind frequently until one day, it hits her hard. She suddenly comes to her senses, realizing she can't keep living like this. She gets her first place by using her emergency savings, a security deposit of 1 million won, and monthly rent of 200,000 won. It's small, but it's hers. A space where no one can scold her or mess with her things. The freedom feels amazing at first. Her family only cared about the money she brought in, so cutting them off was easier than she thought. She's a bit scared at first, but everything feels perfect. The sense of liberation is intense, but doesn't last long. Once she settles in, reality starts to creep back in. Like most people, she ends up dating. She meets a guy at work, they exchange numbers, and before she knows it, they are in a relationship. But things aren't smooth. They keep having issues, especially when she refuses to get intimate with him after he books a motel room. He keeps ranting about how she doesn't love him, and says she's inconsiderate. She thinks this is just how relationships are supposed to be, so she tries to brush it off. One day, he gets upset because she won't let him come over to her place. She tries to explain that her place is too small, but he doesn't believe her. He starts accusing her of seeing someone else, and she's confused, asking why he'd even think that. But he's furious and says she's not giving him a good enough reason. The argument gets heated, and she starts to wonder if this relationship is even worth it. He demands to know why she won't let him into her home. She tries to explain that it feels awkward to bring someone over when they haven't been together long enough. In her mind, it's a reasonable excuse, but he doesn't see it that way. He's frustrated and complains that she always backs out after agreeing to be intimate, making him feel like she's just playing games with him. He points out how hard it is for him to afford a motel room every time they want privacy, and it seems to be wearing on him. The more he talks, the angrier he gets. Finally, in a burst of frustration, he storms off, angrily throwing out a comment about how it's no wonder her mom doesn't like her. He decides they should break up, saying he's tired of the whole situation. She watches him walk away, then turns and walks in the opposite direction, thinking to herself that they always split the motel bill anyway, so what's his problem? After ending her first relationship like that, the hot summer passes, and it becomes full-blown autumn. By the time she gets used to her quiet, uneventful life, she often finds herself thinking about how different she is from the people around her. They all seem so relaxed and full of energy, beaming with vitality. Unlike her, they don't seem weighed down by life. They probably don't date like she did, with all the drama and frustration. She imagines they don't feel lonely even when they are alone, and can say whatever they want with confidence. One day, while she's lost in these thoughts, her phone rings. It's her boss, asking if she can come into work because one of the part-time workers quit. She agrees, saying she's done with class anyway. She was planning to go to the library to study for a while, but now she has to head straight to work. And that's when it happens. She notices a guy standing at the other end of the road, looking right in her direction. His name is So. She glances up, wondering if he's really looking at her. She even comments to herself that he's handsome. But then he turns and starts walking away, still staring at her. She's left wondering why he's like that, why he keeps staring. The next day, she's surprised to find him in the same class as her. She thought she wouldn't see him again, but there he is, continuing to stare at her. This goes on whenever he sees her, and it starts to get to her. One day, she's eating at the cafeteria when he walks in, eyes locked on her as usual. She tries to convince herself that it's just her imagination, but his curious, one-sided gaze makes her feel like a toy being chased by a cat. It's uncomfortable, and she can't take it anymore. She stands up and confronts him, asking why he keeps staring at her. He looks at her, speechless, and just as he's about to say something, a girl comes up to him, dragging him by the arm, saying she's been looking for him for ages. As they walk away together, he tells her to back off, asking why she's making a scene. The girl, with her arms crossed, asks him if he doesn't like her. How you watches them go and feels a strange, bittersweet sense of loss. After that, she decides not to pay attention to So anymore. One night, she goes out drinking with two of her friends. Choi Ji-yu brings up how hard it's been to hang out with her lately, noting that the end of the semester is coming up, but they hardly see each other anymore. The other friend chimes in, pointing out that Ha-yu is the top student in their class and works multiple jobs on top of that. Choi Ji-yu sighs and says she should take it easy, adding that it feels like they're living in completely different worlds. Ha-yu brushes off the comment, telling her not to worry about it. She wonders why they even want to drink with her, considering they aren't particularly close despite being in the same class. They only exchange pleasantries, so it feels a bit strange to be hanging out like this. Choi Ji-yu then mentions that she's thinking about going on a working holiday next year. The other girls ask why she wants to do that. Ji-yu explains that she hasn't been as successful academically as Ha-yu, and doesn't have many qualifications to build a career. When her mom offered to send her on the holiday, she thought it was a good opportunity she shouldn't pass up. The other friend suggests they should all go on a trip to Europe instead. As they start discussing their plans, Ha-yu begins calculating in her head. She thinks about the cost of living, how much she spent last month, and whether she can afford to cut back on her expenses to save money. She mentally scolds herself for worrying about money in a situation like this, but it's hard to shake off the habit. Even as her friends excitedly talk about their future trips, she can't help but keep her focus on her finances, feeling a little disconnected from the conversation. Suddenly, Choi Ji-yu spots Kang Seo at another table and points him out to her friends. Ha-yu looks up and sees the guy who's been staring at her so many times. She didn't even know his name was Kang Seo. Curious, she asks if he's famous. Her friends are surprised by her interest, not expecting her to care about famous guys. They tell her that he's well known, with a nickname that suggests he always catches people's attention wherever he goes. They even mention that he once turned down a movie role, even though they begged him several times to take it. Choi Ji-yu, wanting to make things more exciting, suggests they make a bet. If Ha-yu can get his phone number, she'll cover the drinks for the night. The other girl thinks it sounds like a fun idea, but Hao-yu isn't thrilled about it. Choi Ji-yu doesn't wait long before she stands up and walks over to Kang Seo's table. After a while, she comes back without his number, but she doesn't seem bothered. The second girl tries her luck next, but she also returns empty-handed. Choi Ji-yu then turns to Hao-yu, urging her to give it a shot. Hao-yu hesitates and tries to protest, but her friends are persistent. They start tidying her up, taking off her glasses and telling her she looks better without them. Even though she feels unsure if he'll give her his number, her friends push her towards his table, leaving her with no choice but to go along with it. She walks up to Kang Seo, feeling a bit awkward, and asks for his number. His friend looks annoyed and comments that all three girls should have come together instead of one by one. Kang Seo, however, just asks for her phone. That's when she realizes she left it at her table. Embarrassed, she offers to go get it, but Kang Seo stops her and suggests she give him her number instead. He promises to give her a missed call, so she'll have his number too. Surprised, she quickly types her number into his phone and hands it back to him. He calls her immediately and tells her to check her phone. She thanks him and heads back to her table. Her friends cheer for her achievement, saying she looks better without her glasses. Later, she's in the bathroom, trying to wash her face and clear her blurry vision from all the drinks she had. Suddenly, Kang Seo walks in and spots her. He apologizes, not realizing she was in there. She tells him she's just using the restroom, but he continues to stare at her. Feeling awkward, she apologizes for earlier, explaining that it was just a bet with her friends, which is why she didn't have to pay for the drinks. Kang Seo brushes it off, saying it's no big deal, but he keeps staring at her. Finally, she asks him why he's been staring at her for so long. He apologizes if he made her uncomfortable, and says that she looked familiar. He then asks if she went to SAE Han Middle School. She looks at him in surprise, and it suddenly clicks. She asks if he's the person they used to call Kang Seo. Outside the building, she sits by the road, and Kang Seo brings her a drink. He tells her it's okay if she doesn't remember him since he transferred schools shortly after middle school. As it starts to snow and gets colder, she wonders about the time that's passed. She remembers being taller than him back then. Now, she finally understands why he always stares at her. He admits that it's not just because of that, he actually liked her back then. She almost spits out the drink she just took, shocked by his confession. She asks him why he liked her, and he offers her a tissue, saying he doesn't really know, he just did. She thinks it's weird how he says something so embarrassing so casually. He notices she's cold and apologizes for buying something unnecessary. He also comments that her clothes are very thin. She tells him she's fine and insists he doesn't need to give her his clothes, but he takes off his scarf and wraps it around her neck anyway, saying he has to do it. He moves closer to her. She knows she's in a vulnerable state, needing any small kindness right now, and she might be easily swayed. So, she lets him put the scarf on her without much thought. She's drunk, the weather is cold, the scarf is warm, and she thinks maybe it's okay just this once. He then says that his house is right in front of them. She makes excuses to herself, thinking this situation is inevitable. The next morning, she gets dressed and leaves the room while he's still sleeping. She goes back home and starts checking her phone. She needs to get a prescription and wonders if there's any place open since it's already past 1. Her phone rings, and she sees it's an unknown number. When she answers, she hears Kang Seo's voice. She had purposely not saved his number yesterday. He asks her why she left first and why she didn't wake him up. She tells him she wanted him to sleep more since it's a Saturday. He apologizes for what happened the day before, but she says it's okay, thinking to herself that she kind of expected it. Plus, she isn't really in a position to meet anyone new right now anyway. He then asks how someone like her could get along with him. She tries to blame it on the drinks, but he says that's not what he meant. He admits he wasn't prepared for what happened and doesn't have much experience with things like that. He also apologizes for bringing her to his place, saying he worries he might have been too pushy, and that she might have come along just because she couldn't refuse. She tells him she doesn't regret it, but she needs to go to the hospital now before it closes. He offers to go with her and asks where she lives. Realizing it might be awkward for her to give him her address, he adds that if she lives around Daehangno, she can just tell him the name of a big building, and he'll wait there for her. They arrive at the hospital, and after waiting for a while, it's finally her turn. She's called up and given her prescription. They direct her to go downstairs to the pharmacy to get the medication. When she sees the price, Kang Seo offers to pay for it. She's surprised by his offer. He then asks if there are many severe side effects from the medicine, and says he'll definitely be more careful from now on. His concern surprises her. Their relationship started without any formal mention of dating, and they ended up being a big part of each other's lives. To celebrate their 7th anniversary, they get matching couple rings. Despite their differences, they are very similar, and being together feels easy. Time flies by, and before they know it, they are in their late 30s. They've had a lot of issues since they started living together, like him leaving cups around the house, not doing the dishes, arguing over which movie to watch, and quarreling a lot. During some of their fights, they both regret ever deciding to live together. Sometimes, they have real arguments that make them stop talking to each other for a while. While lying in bed, she covers only herself with the blanket, leaving him uncovered. This is just how they are. They've reached their 10th anniversary together. As they keep moving forward, they have no idea what challenges might come their way. The next day, after their big argument, they are both getting ready for work. He walks into the room and says he's sorry for what happened yesterday. She responds that he should be sorry because he was in the wrong. He's surprised by her answer because he expected her to apologize too. She tells him she doesn't think she's wrong, so she won't apologize. He wonders how he's supposed to live with someone who's so stubborn. As he's about to leave, she says they should make up before they head to work. He's caught off guard and says it's too sudden, and he can't do it right now. He mentions that it's his first day at work, and he's not sure how long it will take to get to the office. He asks if she'll take the blame if he's late. She questions if he's not confident about being on time, which gets him more fired up. He pushes her onto the bed and starts taking off his clothes, saying she started this and now she has to be ready to lose. After a few minutes, they lie there, both feeling worn out. She's a bit disappointed and says he's acting like he did a great job. He defends himself, saying he's letting her off this time because he might be late. He grumbles about how much he hates going to work and wonders why people even have to work. She agrees, sharing his frustration. They get up and start getting dressed. He tells her that he's going to use the car today. While he's getting ready, she hands him a tie, saying it's a congratulatory gift for his new job. She encourages him to wear it. He gives her a warm hug, thanks her for the gift, and tells her he loves her. At his new workplace, he walks into the office and greets everyone, introducing himself. One of the workers is explaining how things run at the company and comments that they hire people based on their looks. A young woman sits at a distance, seeming uninterested. Later, some of the men are gathered, smoking and talking about the company. They discuss how it has a lot of customers. One of them asks Kang Seo where he worked before. He tells them, and manager Jong mentions that the previous place was known for not letting their workers take breaks. Chief No asks if Kang Seo is better than the others. They continue talking about how different companies compare to theirs. Kang Seo fits in smoothly. One of the men asks him if he works out regularly or if his height and muscles are natural. Kang Seo says they are natural. As they chat, the young lady, Miss Seung-hee, walks by. Manager Jong asks if she's going to get coffee, and she says she is. As she walks away, Chief No remarks that he's never seen her smile while they are working together. He adds that work would be more interesting with some positive energy, pointing out that she's the only female employee. The others tease Chief No, saying he's lecturing again, and wonder what he'll do if she hears them, recalling a time when she caught him gossiping about her. The chief quickly defends himself, saying he's not gossiping. Kang Seo starts to wonder why the company only has men and thinks it's not a good thing. Later that night, manager Shin praises Seo for working hard. He asks if the job is tough, but Seo says it's not that different from his last workplace and adds that having support from his seniors makes it even better. Manager Shin tells him to let them know if he faces any problems. As Manager Shin heads back into the building, he tells Seo to come back inside when he's done smoking. As Seo steps outside and is about to light his cigarette, he suddenly feels a hard tap on his back. Startled, he turns around to see an older woman standing there. Confused, he asks why she did that. She sternly tells him that she had warned people not to smoke there again, but no one listens. She then asks if he works in the building, pointing out that smoking in that spot makes the smoke drift into her building. Still surprised, Seo asks who she is. She introduces herself as the owner of the building next door, and explains that the smoking area is actually on the other side. She warns him that if she catches him smoking there again, she'll give him a good scolding. Seo quickly apologizes and walks off in the direction she pointed out. Seo smoked in that spot because it's what everyone else does. How was he supposed to know there's a separate area? His back is still sore from the old woman's hit. As he rubs the spot, he notices Miss Seung-hee standing nearby. They both stand there in awkward silence for a while. The timing couldn't be worse. He knows he can't pretend not to see her, but he also doesn't want to just stand around. When she takes out a cigarette and struggles to light it, he quickly offers his own lighter, asking if she's all right. He's pretty sure she's been crying. She turns around abruptly, apologizing as soon as she realizes it's him. She grabs the lighter from his hand and finally manages to light her cigarette. Seo can already see how this could easily be misunderstood. People often mistake his simple acts of kindness for something more, and he knows that asking someone if they are all right is pretty useless. It's just a temporary fix. He remembers how he used to enjoy moments like this when he was younger, but that was before he met Hao-yu. Now, he knows better than to create uncomfortable situations from the start. So, after finishing his cigarette, he walks away without taking the lighter back. He ignores her attempt to start a conversation, and she's left standing there, completely shocked by his cold response. Later that night, Hao-yu walks into the house and is surprised to find Kang Seo already home. She asks him why he's back so early. He smiles and says he finally got to leave work at 6 p.m. for once. She congratulates him, happy for him, and then pulls out some food she bought on her way home, suggesting they have dinner together. After they finish eating, Hao-yu takes a closer look at his back. He mentions that it still hurts from getting hit earlier. She gently scolds him, saying he should have found the smoking area sooner, but she's relieved there's no scar. As they talk, his phone chimes. Since he's too engrossed in the game he's playing, he asks her to check the message for him. She opens the message and sees that it's from Seung-hee, thanking him for lending her his lighter, and saying she'll return it the next day. Hao-yu reads the message out loud, and Kang Seo casually tells her to reply for him, explaining that Seung-hee is a co-worker, and he lent her the lighter in the smoking area. Hao-yu raises an eyebrow and asks if she looks like she's that generous, telling him he should reply himself. He sighs and playfully begs her to just do it for him. As she thinks it over, she clicks on Seung-hee's profile picture, studying it closely. Kang Seo notices and asks what she's staring at so intently. She then asks if there are female employees at his new workplace, pointing out that his last job only had male employees. Kang Seo tells her that Miss Seung-hee is the only female employee at his new job, and that she handles accounting. Hao-yu keeps staring at the picture, then comments on Seung-hee's body, saying she's jealous and wonders if she could look like that if she exercised a bit more. Kang Seo chuckles and teases her, saying even daily exercise wouldn't get her there. He playfully suggests she should start working out a little and stop complaining about her hips and shoulders hurting after every workout. Then, he takes his phone back from her. How are you pouts and says she doesn't like exercising, adding that no matter how much he works out, his body will just rot from all the cigarettes he smokes. Kang Seo grins and insists that his body won't rot. He then suggests she should at least eat some rice, pointing out that she'll keep hurting if she continues eating like a bird. She sighs, and he notices, asking if something is bothering her or if she's trying to get him to stop playing games. She looks at him and nods, saying he's right and that he's already 31, so it's time to stop. He laughs and asks what age has to do with playing games, reminding her that it's just his hobby. She agrees, but only reluctantly. After a moment, she tells him that she'll have to go to work soon, so he needs to look after the house. He nods and says he knows, joking that he'll have to order food since she won't be around. The next day, as Hao-yu heads to work, she can't shake the feeling of annoyance. She's irritated by that girl, Miss Seung-hee. It's not the first time she's felt this way. She remembers something similar happening during the summer of that year when Seo was group studying. She was standing outside, waiting patiently for him to finish. She checks her phone and sees that it's already 9 minutes past 8 p.m. He had told her he'd be done by 8. A few moments later, he finally comes out and asks if she's been waiting long. He apologizes for making her wait and suggests they go grab dinner. She pulls out her phone and finds a nearby restaurant. As they are about to leave, someone calls out, asking if she's Seo's girlfriend. It's a girl named Miss Gaeong, walking toward them with a friendly smile. Seo answers yes, explaining that they had planned to have dinner together. Miss Gaeong looks Hao-yu up and down and comments that she's very tall, admitting she's a bit jealous because she's short. Hao-yu thanks her for the compliment, and Seo chimes in, teasing that he likes tall girls, which is why his girlfriend is tall. Gaeong laughs and says they look good together since Seo is also tall. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Seo bids Gaeong farewell, and they head off to dinner. As they walk away, Hao-yu notices another girl at the far end of the road, quietly walking away. The memory lingers in her mind, adding to her unease. That strange feeling doesn't just come out of nowhere. Not long after, Hao-yu finds out why. She sees some messages on Kang Seo's phone from a girl. The girl is offering herself to him, suggesting they could date without Hao-yu knowing. Upset, she confronts him and asks if it's the girl who was standing at a distance that night. Kang Seo is caught off guard, admitting that he thought she'd naturally assume it was Gaeong. She demands to know why he always denies things like this, and he explains that if he doesn't, these girls will keep bothering him, saying they are just too clingy. He then asks her if she's seriously worried about that now. She looks at him, frustrated, and tells him that he's not being sincere at all. As Hao-yu gets closer to her office, she wonders why that odd feeling keeps coming back, even stronger than before. She questions whether she's just anxious because of the new female employee, especially since there were never any before. As she walks down the corridor, she notices her chief and another co-worker standing by the window, watching something intently. She greets them and asks what they are looking at so early in the day. As she comes closer, she sees it too. They are staring at their director, who is standing outside with Yerin, a young contract staff member. Yerin is holding onto the director affectionately. Her chief comments that they are shameless, adding that Yerin is bold for dating an old man like the director. As the chief mentions that the director bought Yerin a latte, the other lady comments that it really looks like they are dating. The chief then warns her that married men can be worse than animals, so she should be careful. Hao-yu nods, but she's puzzled about why she needs to know this in the first place. The conversation keeps circling back to Yerin, and Hao-yu feels less interested, wondering why she has to hear all this gossip when she doesn't even work closely with Yerin. Later, in the director's office, he asks Hao-yu if she has a core conference today. He suggests that she could give some of her work to Yerin. Hao-yu politely declines, saying she can handle it herself and that the chief assigned the task to her, so she'll be fine. The director, however, isn't satisfied. He points out that Hao-yu is the only one who hasn't worked with Yerin yet. He reminds her that the reason they hire contract staff is to share the workload and teach them as well. He insists that Yerin doesn't have much to do and suggests giving her something easy, at least. Hao-yu wants to object, but before she can say anything, the director raises his voice. He tells her to stop arguing and follow his instructions. He emphasizes that Yerin has complained about feeling shut out and that, as just a contract staff member, they can't let this continue. He also warns Hao-yu about the potential damage to the company's reputation if bad rumors start spreading. Hao-yu finds herself giving Yerin a list of tasks, explaining what to do when someone calls and which numbers to pass on for urgent business. Yerin nods, saying she'll handle it and that Hao-yu can count on her. Hao-yu tells her she'll be stepping out for a bit, thinking there's nothing too difficult, so everything should be fine. As she gets into her car, she realizes she was so caught up in transferring her work to Yerin that she ended up leaving late. It's already past 5 p.m., marking the end of her shift. She wonders if she should stop by somewhere before heading home, just to see someone's face for a bit. She dials a number, but no one answers. She arrives at a place she heard the company was near, and steps out of the car, deciding to take a walk around. That day, she's determined to see the face she's been thinking about every day. There's a stubbornness in her that feels strange, almost like something was pulling her there. Maybe it's because of that nagging feeling, the one that tells her something isn't right. And then, she witnesses something she didn't expect, her boyfriend hugging another girl. At Kang Seo's workplace, it's closing time. He stands up, stretches, and feels a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, some freedom. Hao-yu is heading off on a business trip, and he'll have some time to himself. It's been a while since he's had a break from his packed schedule. As he steps out of the building, he starts thinking about what he'll do with his evening. A beer sounds nice, but maybe he'll decide once he gets home. He hopes to see Hao-yu's face one last time before she leaves. After all, he won't see her for 2 days. As he's walking, Miss Seung-hee suddenly comes running toward him, calling his name. She gets closer but slips, and he quickly catches her, holding her close to steady her. This is the moment when Hao-yu sees them together. He asks Seung-hee if she's okay, and why she was in such a hurry. She explains that she wanted to return the lighter and apologizes for the earlier incident. He's surprised she ran just to return a lighter and tells her she can keep it. Then, he looks up and notices Hao-yu. Without listening to what Seung-hee has to say, he quickly walks away from her. When he reaches Hao-yu, he's taken aback and asks what she's doing there. She tells him she wanted to stop by on her way to the business trip. He tells her it's funny, that he was hoping to see her one more time before she left, and asks how she managed to show up just at the right moment. He mentions that he saw her call, but couldn't answer because he was still in the office. He asks if she was trying to find the company's location and wonders if she came just to have dinner with him. But she's distracted, her attention drawn to Seung-hee, the person she's been feeling threatened by. Noticing that she isn't listening, he asks what she's doing. She snaps back to the moment and asks him to repeat himself. When he does, she shakes her head and says she doesn't have time, which leaves him upset. He tells her he's glad they got to see each other before she leaves and points out that the woman behind her is Miss Seung-hee, explaining that she suddenly tripped. She responds that she knows, she saw everything, and he doesn't need to explain. The next day at the office, she's deep in thought. It's not just intuition anymore, it feels like a confirmation of a theory she's been forming subconsciously. Seo is always surrounded by everyone, while she's the one who ends up standing awkwardly beside him. She thinks about how one day, someone perfect for the job will come along, someone cute, beautiful, mature, loving, and not spiteful. She remembers Seung-hee's profile picture, where it looks like she's holding a puppy. One day, Kang Seo shows her some pictures of puppies, saying they belong to an acquaintance who's trying to separate them. He suggests they take one home. She immediately says no. He asks why she refused without even looking at the pictures. She answers sharply, saying they both have work and wouldn't be around to handle any messes or clean up after the puppy when it sheds its fur. She reminds him that they'd also need to take the puppy for walks and train it to use the potty. She asks if he plans to take a day off to take it to the vet if it gets sick. He tells her he was just making a suggestion and wonders why she's so serious. She replies that he's talking nonsense and says she doesn't want a pet, so he shouldn't bring it up again. He tells her he understands. Now, she feels like she might have been too harsh. She was just worried he might impulsively bring a puppy home. Her phone rings, pulling her out of her thoughts, and she picks it up. A voice asks her if she's in charge of the legal education. She wonders who it is. The caller goes on about why her company hasn't refunded their money, even though the refund period has passed. She explains that it's hard to process the refund because the fault isn't on their side. They continue to talk. She asks how the caller got her number, and the caller says they got it from an employee. She immediately thinks it's Miss Yerin. She tells the caller that if they have any more questions, they should contact the office and not her personal number. Then, she ends the call. She quickly dials Yerin's number to ask why she gave out her personal phone number. Miss Yerin tries to defend herself by repeating the instructions she was given earlier. Hao-yu tells her that's not what she meant and scolds her, saying if she didn't understand earlier, she should have asked for clarification. Miss Yerin apologizes and Hao-yu ends the call, hoping this will be enough for her to understand. At Kang Seo's workplace, it's closing time. Manager Jong realizes he ordered the wrong items, and it's too late to cancel. After Kang Seo points out the mistake, Manager Jong asks if Seo can find someone else to supply the goods. Seo is surprised and says it's too sudden, and means he'd have to work overtime. Manager Jong begs him, saying he's already doing a great job. Seo replies that he has some weaknesses, and refuses to look at Jong's face, because it's hard to turn him down. Manager Jong is persistent, saying it's just this once. He explains that today is his wedding anniversary, everything has been booked, and he doesn't want to be late like last year because his wife will be mad. Seo still refuses, and Manager Jong is surprised at how firm Seo is. Finally, Manager Jong offers Seo a restaurant coupon in exchange for his help. Seo looks at it. Later, Seo has been convinced to work overtime. He looks at the meal coupons and can't believe he was tricked. He thinks it's okay because he wants to go somewhere nice this Christmas, and he thinks Hao-yu would like it too. Meanwhile, across the office, Miss Seung-hee is also working overtime at her desk. Seo wonders why he didn't mention that he and Seung-hee have been dating for 10 years. He thinks he doesn't need to share such personal details. As he looks at his work and feels confused, he decides to ask his senior for help. Seung-hee watches him in silence. Seo calls Manager Jong to clarify something, and Jong thanks him for agreeing to work overtime, saying that he didn't have to argue with his wife because of it. Seo feels happy and tells Jong that he'll ask for a favor in the future. When he gets to his desk, he sees a note from Seung-hee. The next day, in Hao-yu's office, her director comes over and asks her what happened with Miss Yerin that made her cry. Hao-yu is surprised and wonders what he means. He tells her not to take out her frustration on others by being rude. Hao-yu remembers scolding Yerin the day before but didn't realize Yerin was so upset. She explains to the director that she was just following his instructions by assigning the job to Yerin, and doesn't think she should be criticized for it. The director tells her not to take it personally, and that he's just giving her a warning. Hao-yu glances at Yerin across the office, and Yerin quickly lowers her head. Later that night, Hao-yu lies in bed feeling down. Seo walks in and asks her what's wrong. She tells him it's just work stuff, and to not worry about it. Seo lies down beside her, and says she always seems like something is bothering her, but never talks about it. Hao-yu explains that talking about work problems doesn't fix anything. Seo then asks if she ever felt the same way when he talked about his work. She says it's not that she hated hearing about his work. Seo says he feels the same way. Seo suggests they have a drink or some beer like they used to. They get off the bed, and Hao-yu tells him about what happened at work earlier. Seo gets upset and wonders why the director acted that way. He asks if anyone else had anything to say, and Hao-yu says no, that it felt like everyone just expected it to happen. She mentions that she's never worked with Yerin before, so she's not sure what to do. Seo gets even angrier, and says they need to be taught a lesson. Hao-yu feels like Seo's reaction is getting out of control. He says he's getting more and more upset about what she just told him. Then a call interrupts them, and Hao-yu answers it, wondering who is calling so late. She sees it's her mother and hangs up quickly, annoyed that her mom keeps finding her number. She wonders how her mom keeps getting it. Seo tries to talk to her, but she won't listen, saying she's told him before that she doesn't get along with her family and has no plans to contact them now or in the future. Seo is left speechless. Hao-yu feels like she overreacted again. It's odd that, after 10 years, she still knows nothing about her family. She wonders if she should talk about it now, but then remembers what her ex-boyfriend said about her behavior being why her mother hates her. She worries that Seo might think she's strange or unusual if she's cut ties with her family. Seo pulls her out of her thoughts by asking about what else is going on at work. She says it's nothing important, but he insists he wants to hear about it. She starts talking about the exhibition she attended and tries to explain more, but Seo seems lost because he doesn't understand any of it. She gets frustrated that he isn't paying attention and asks why he wanted to know in the first place. Angry, she grabs his clothes, showing her irritation. Seo tells her that she always seems so indifferent about everything, but when she talks about work, she becomes really attractive. Hao-yu tells him to stop, saying she's already tired from the business trip and doesn't see why he's making such annoying comments. He moves closer and asks if she's trying to avoid him. She wonders if he's teasing her on purpose. Before she can respond, he kisses her. She finally gets her bearings and asks him to wait a moment. Seo asks if she doesn't like it. Hao-yu says she doesn't want to do this here, and would rather go to her room. Every time this happens, he comes at her like an unstoppable wave, making her forget everything else. She feels like sand being swept away, just waiting quietly. They head into the room and start getting intimate. Whenever they face a problem, they often find comfort in each other's warmth, pretending that there are no issues and just relaxing together. It's a bad habit of piling problems on top of problems. Afterward, they lie exhausted on the bed. Seo asks if they should get new couple rings since they've lost the ones they had before. He suggests getting the most expensive and nicest ones, but Hao-yu disagrees. She says they'll probably lose them again, and suggests using the money to buy something delicious instead, since neither of them wears rings often. Seo asks why that doesn't make sense. He was about to say they could get married in the future, but stops midway. Hao-yu turns to him, urging him to finish what he was going to say. Seo says he's forgotten what he wanted to say. Hao-yu teases him, asking if he's already at the age where he forgets things and wonders why he seems to be the only one getting older. She tells him she ordered some supplements and advises him to start taking them the next day, noting that they are good for memory too. As she turns to sleep, Seo watches her quietly, lost in his thoughts. He reaches out and gently touches her head. Even though he frequently moves to new places and meets new people, he's often talked about, mostly for his looks. Even with all this attention, he feels something is missing. Despite having everything around him, he feels empty. Eventually, when everything is taken away, he realizes he's left with nothing, which creates a deep sense of fear. In his 20s, Seo struggles with a deep sense of emptiness. He's at a school park when a notification pops up on his phone. He's not usually excited about class gatherings. Often, he'd rather stay alone and rest, but if he skips them, he'll probably get scolded, and then the same people will show up again. As he's thinking about this, he spots a girl ahead of him. "It's how are you?" She looks different now, her hair is frizzy, her lips are dry and cracked, and her clothes are worn out. Her eyes seem empty and exhausted. Seo feels her face is familiar, but he can't quite remember her. He realizes she's no longer someone who would reach out without hesitation. As they keep staring at each other, he feels like he's seen her somewhere before. He starts to think he should be the one to offer her a hand now. After that day, Seo starts to follow Haoyu around, though he does it half-heartedly. He sees her in class, on the road, and keeps trying to remember where he has seen her before. Even at the cafeteria, he can't stop staring at her. She notices and asks why he's always staring. Seo is speechless, and a lot of thoughts run through his mind. He still can't recall where he knows her from and isn't sure if he should ask her. Just as he's about to speak, another girl pulls him away by the arm. Seo is annoyed by the interruption, but still looks back at Haoyu. As he turns away, he feels a childish satisfaction, happy that he somehow matters to her. Later that day, he follows Haoyu quietly, telling himself to stop acting like a stalker, and just ask her directly. He finds her behind a building, making a call. She seems really angry and tells the caller not to come, because they don't care anyway. She says she'd rather die there than deal with them, and it's clear she's talking to her mom. Seo listens silently, feeling a pang of hurt. He realizes that his excuse of her looking familiar is too weak compared to her pain. Even though he starts to understand why she's so troubled, she seems to push him out of her thoughts. In class, Seo keeps thinking about what he heard Haoyu say on the phone. Her face was filled with such despair that it seemed like she might disappear from the world at any moment. He feels like he can't reach out to her. Later that night at the bar, Seo is having a drink with his friend when Choi Ji-yu and her friend approach them. Choi Ji-yu asks Seo for a favor. She wants him to give his number to their friend, who will arrive later, and Seo realizes she's talking about Haoyu. Even though she looks so peaceful while she sleeps, he often feels like she's so delicate she might shatter like glass. Flashback to 16 years ago. Seo is playing football with his friends during middle school. He scores a goal, and his teammates praise him for it. The coach from the other team and others also say he is really good. Seo has a nickname, the Little One, because of his short height. He thinks to himself that soccer isn't about height. As they head back to class, Seo sees some girls chatting about the soccer game in the hallway. One of the girls mentions that another boy was cool in the game. Seo passes by and wonders why they are praising the other boy when he was the one who scored all the goals. The girls are talking about Seo, mentioning how short he is and comparing him to something small. They think it's better for tall guys to play soccer, and say short people look funny when they play. Hearing this makes Seo feel really bad. As he walks sadly down the corridor, he runs into young Haoyu coming out of a teacher's office. They stare at each other for a moment. She's taller than him, and he feels a bit intimidated by her height. Someone calls Seo, asking him to join them at the cafeteria. He quickly turns and leaves. As he walks away, he makes a comment about her height, only to realize she's still watching him. This makes him feel very uncomfortable. He struggles with a height complex during puberty. Back then, they were just 14 years old. During a dodgeball game, the trainer asks the students to pair up, with one boy and one girl. Seo doesn't like this idea. He'd prefer to play without partners, or with someone of the same gender. But the trainer insists and threatens to pair them himself. All the other students rush to pair up with the tall kids, not wanting to team up with Seo because they think he'll get hit with the ball on his head. He hears their comments and feels really miserable. That's why he begged his mother for height-increasing injections, but she refused, saying he would grow naturally when the time came. This made him hate her a bit. One day, a hand reaches out to him, asking if he wants to be her partner. It's "How are you?" He's surprised and thinks she might be teasing him. He tells her to find a partner among the tall kids, but she says she wants to team up with him because he's good at sports. She mentions she saw him playing soccer during lunchtime. This surprises him, because he always thought she was only good at studying. That was their first conversation. After a while, they get eliminated from the game. Seo teases her, saying she doesn't know how to play sports. She apologizes and promises to partner with him again next time. But with his sudden transfer, there's no chance for a next time. As time goes on, Seo realizes his mother was right. His height issues fade away as he grows taller, and people start noticing him more. Choi Ji-yu explains that she wants to treat her friend to a drink, but doesn't want to make her friend feel awkward by offering directly. Instead, she suggests doing it as a bet. Seo gets why she wants to do it this way and agrees to help. He mentions that he's been asked for numbers before, but this is the first time he's had such a request. After thanking him, Choi Ji-yu and her friend leave. His friend wonders out loud why girls go through so much trouble just to buy another girl a drink. Kang Seo agrees. Then his friend asks why Seo isn't in a relationship and mentions a girl from their class that Seo often talks about. His friend is surprised that Seo hasn't even tried to talk to her, teasing him for acting tough while actually being hesitant. Seo feels frustrated and admits he can't bring himself to approach her. He jokes that he feels like her glasses would shoot lasers at him if he tried. He adds that he doesn't even know her name, and they don't take attendance in their class anyway. Later, when Hao-yu comes to ask for his number, he notices she isn't wearing glasses, so he finally recognizes her. It hits him that she's been the one he's been thinking about all along. He remembers when they were drinking by the roadside that night, and she asked him why he said he liked her. He didn't know why he liked her then, or even now. He tries to figure out the reason, but quickly gives up. Honestly, he just wanted to be close to her for no specific reason, especially when she's off guard. He knows he's being selfish. The next morning, after they spent the night together, he remembers what happened and tries to call her. He still needs a good reason to approach her. Back to the present. Seo didn't want to rely on anyone, but without meaning to, he ended up sitting next to her. Now, if he's not there, she might fall apart too easily. The next day at work, Seung-hee finds her note in the trash bin. Seo walks in, looking tired, and wonders if he stayed up too late the night before. He thinks to himself that he'll never be the one to leave her first. That's what he's decided. Seo runs into Seung-hee and wonders if she saw the note and snacks in the trash bin. He asks her why she's in early today. She says she came to get something from the cabinet and comments that it's finally Friday. As she walks away, he wonders if she noticed the note and snacks. He tries to calm himself, thinking that she probably didn't see them. Later that day, manager Jong tells Seo that they need to go on a sales trip. Seo sees another employee trying to help Seung-hee, and the manager gets angry, saying the employee should leave the box for Seung-hee to carry since it's not heavy. The employee replies that the manager is nagging like a woman, and the manager scolds him for being lazy and clumsy. Seo watches, amazed. At the smoking area, Seo asks the manager if he was also hit by the old woman who lives next door. The manager says no and then tells Seo that the company car will be coming next month. He asks Seo to keep track of all expenses and make receipts. Seo understands his new job duties. The manager tells him to ask any questions if he's unsure about anything. Seo says he doesn't have any questions right now. The manager continues with his instructions and advises Seo not to get involved with the female employees, mentioning that he doesn't like it when things get noisy. Seo feels the manager is being too conservative, but he doesn't think so. He comments that the manager seems to dislike Seung-hee. The manager asks if it's that obvious, and Seo asks why he dislikes Seung-hee. The manager says he doesn't like her behavior. He adds that he hasn't had a direct conflict with her and that he's married, but he just doesn't like her attitude. Seo tells the manager not to be too hard on her, pointing out that it's tough working in a male-dominated company. He then asks if the manager has feelings for Seung-hee, but the manager says he has a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Seung-hee overhears their conversation while she's drinking her coffee. Later that evening, after a meeting with Director No, Seo returns to his desk and notices a coffee cup there. He wonders who left it and asks his senior, who's passing by, if they know who put it on his table. The senior says he doesn't know who left the coffee, as he just came in too. He asks if Seo bought it and forgot about it, since that happens to him sometimes. Seo doesn't think that's the case. Meanwhile, Seung-hee is sitting quietly at her desk. At closing time, Seo walks out of the building, and the manager wishes him a happy weekend. As Seo walks down the street, he's still holding the coffee. He doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't want to throw it away because it's new and still hot. He's unsure whether to take it because he doesn't know who gave it to him. He remembers a time in college when he drank something someone left at the library and got into trouble because it had sleeping pills in it. So, he decides to throw the coffee away. Just as he's about to do that, he hears a voice telling him not to throw it away. He turns around, surprised to see it's Seung-hee. She tells him she's grateful he defended her in front of the department head. She says if he throws it away, she'll be disappointed. She explains that she bought the coffee from the cafe next to their office, so he shouldn't worry about it and should just enjoy it. Seo promises to drink it. Seo and Hao-yu are sitting in a diner. He chats with the owner, who says it's been a while since he last visited. Seo explains that he's been busy with his job change. They exchange some pleasantries while Hao-yu stands quietly by his side. Once they are seated, food is served. Seo asks Hao-yu if she'll come with him to a wedding tomorrow. She asks which wedding, and he tells her it's for a classmate of his. He adds that they are not really close, but he got a personal invitation, so he feels like he should go. Hao-yu comments that he was always saying he didn't have friends, but now he's getting a lot of wedding invitations this year. She then asks about the coffee he's been carrying around. Seo thinks for a moment and lies, saying he got it after work because he was so tired. Hao-yu looks at him, not convinced, since she knows he doesn't like hot coffee. She can tell he's lying but just laughs it off, thinking that things not immediately visible aren't so important. It's the wedding day, and Seo and Hao-yu are at the venue. The place is buzzing with excitement. Over the loudspeakers, a voice announces that the couples are about to make their entrance and asks everyone to clap to show their support. Hao-yu and Seo are sitting at a table together, and Hao-yu's phone suddenly rings with a number she doesn't recognize. She decides not to answer it and lets it ring. As the couple start marching down the aisle, Seo and Hao-yu join the crowd in clapping. Hao-yu comments that the couples look beautiful, and Seo agrees with her. At that moment, it feels like they've made some kind of unspoken promise to each other. Even though they haven't talked about marriage directly, there's a sense of commitment between them. Hao-yu feels nervous about her own background, which makes her think of herself as a potential bride. Seo, meanwhile, is afraid of being turned down by her if he ever brought up the topic. When the food arrives, they both complain about how expensive weddings are these days. They also remember that they need to buy gifts for the couple. Seo takes a bite of his food and immediately thinks it's a waste because it doesn't taste very good. Hao-yu tries her dish and thinks it's just okay. Seo glances at her and decides to offer her some of his food, trying to convince her that it's delicious. Hao-yu initially refuses, saying that she's never enjoyed anything from him before. Seo insists, telling her that if the food isn't good, she can hit him with a sledgehammer. Hao-yu finally agrees to try it. After taking a bite, she scrunches up her face in disappointment, because it still doesn't taste good. Seo laughs and teases her, saying she looks funny making that face. Despite her disappointment, she can't help but laugh along with him. Hao-yu gets really annoyed, but Seo quickly tells her he's just kidding. She tries to hit him playfully, and he apologizes. Then he remembers something he wanted to tell her earlier, but had forgotten. He tells her that their 10th anniversary is coming up on Monday. Hao-yu thinks it's not a big deal and wonders what he wants her to do about it. Seo says he got her a gift, but she doesn't seem interested in taking it. As they are arguing about it, someone approaches from behind. The person asks if he's Kang Seo. Seo turns around and sees a young man, who introduces himself as Moon Jae-yun. They were classmates back in school. Seo stands up, and they greet each other, exchanging pleasantries. It turns out they haven't seen each other since they graduated from high school. Seo introduces Jae-yun to Hao-yu. Jae-yun offers his hand for a handshake, and Hao-yu hesitates for a moment before shaking it. She didn't realize he wanted to shake hands. Seo asks Jae-yun if he'll stay to eat, but Jae-yun says he has another friend's wedding to go to. He just wanted to say hi because he recognized Seo's face. They agree to catch up another time. After Jae-yun leaves, Seo tells Hao-yu that Jae-yun was in his class back in school, and has changed so much that he barely recognized him. Hao-yu tells Seo that she didn't realize Jae-yun was close to the groom. As Jae-yun walks away, he keeps glancing back at them, as if he's not quite ready to leave yet. It's Monday at Hao-yu's workplace. She's outside with her chief, who is looking out at Yerin, who is standing by herself, crying. The chief wonders why Yerin is acting this way, especially since it's so cold outside and she isn't dressed warmly. The chief says she can't stand Yerin and tells Hao-yu to go and calm her down. The chief explains that Hao-yu is the least awkward among the staff, and that Yerin was a junior from her school. She says she doesn't want to deal with Yerin herself, so she asks Hao-yu to take care of it because it's embarrassing for people from the other building to see Yerin crying. Hao-yu looks at her chief, thinking that even though they went to the same school, she and Yerin were practically strangers. She walks over to Yerin and tells her it's too cold outside, and that they should go back inside the building. Yerin responds that she doesn't want to go inside, because she's embarrassed with people walking by and seeing her cry. Hao-yu wonders why Yerin thinks people aren't seeing her outside. Hao-yu then asks Yerin why she's crying. Yerin explains that her boyfriend has been telling small lies lately, and that it seems like he likes someone else more than her. Hao-yu feels she shouldn't have asked about it because the information sounds very personal. She starts to worry that she might get into trouble for prying into Yerin's private life. Hao-yu's mind drifts back to the day Seo told her he had bought the coffee. She wonders why that memory comes up now. She looks at Yerin and says that it must be really hard for her. She reminds Yerin that she's still young and has a bright future ahead, so she shouldn't worry too much. Yerin replies that she likes her boyfriend a lot. She says that it feels like he might be interested in someone else, and she's starting to think it's more than just a feeling, maybe it's her intuition. She apologizes, saying she's so frustrated that she can't focus on her work properly. She also apologizes for getting Hao-yu in trouble with the director last week, explaining that she didn't explain herself well. Yerin admits that she knows people at the office don't like her, and that she's feeling lost and frustrated. Hao-yu looks at her, speechless. She realizes she thought she could just stay out of it, and not get involved. Hao-yu offers Yerin the coffee she just bought, telling her she'll get another one for herself. She reassures Yerin that work is a place where she can learn and improve step by step. Hao-yu adds that she's not trying to make any assumptions about Yerin's boyfriend, but there's no solid proof that he's with someone else. She tells Yerin not to be too sad and encourages her by saying that since she's a good person, she'll eventually meet another good person in the future. Haoyu's words of encouragement lift Yerin's spirits, and she stands up, heading back inside with a smile. Seeing Yerin go inside makes Haoyu feel like she's done enough for now. She decides to go get another coffee. As she tries to walk, she feels pain in her shoes. She remembers why people say you shouldn't wear something you're not used to. Haoyu sits down by the road and takes off her shoes, holding them in her hand. These shoes were a gift from Seo a while ago. She had kept them in the shoe cabinet because they were uncomfortable. Even though she didn't like wearing them, she took them out today for reasons she finds a bit silly and childish now. The person who gave her the shoes probably doesn't mind if she wears them or not. While she's sitting there, someone approaches her and says it looks like she's been hard on herself. She looks up and sees a young man. He asks if she's okay and offers her a tissue. It's Moon Jae-yun. As Haoyu collects the tissues from Moon Jae-yun, she thanks him and asks how he knows her name. She wonders if they've met before. Jae-yun explains that they met at the wedding ceremony on Saturday. Haoyu then remembers seeing him there, but she accidentally calls him by a different name. He gently corrects her, and she apologizes for forgetting his name. Jae-yun asks if he can sit down next to her, and Haoyu agrees. He takes a seat beside her and asks if she works in the building. Haoyu replies that she works on the 6th floor, and then asks if he works in the same building too. Jae-yun says he does and mentions that he was recently transferred to the building because of a reshuffling of employees. Haoyu glances at his staff identity card and sees that he works on the 1st floor at the bank. Jae-yun notices her discomfort and offers her a bandage. Haoyu takes it but is surprised that he is carrying a bandage, thinking it's something more commonly carried by women. Jae-yun explains that he works with paper all day and often cuts his hands, which is why he always keeps a bandage with him. Jae-yun crouches down to help put the bandage on her heel, but Haoyu stops him. She says she'll apply it herself. She explains that it's not that she doesn't appreciate his help, but it feels a bit awkward for her to have someone else touch her feet. Jae-yun hands her the bandage, and she puts it on her heel. She thanks him and says she feels better now, all thanks to his help. As she gets up, Jae-yun notices her broken heel and tells her it might be hard for her to get back to her office with the heel like that. He offers to go get some slippers from his office for her. Haoyu tells him not to worry about it. She says she can manage, and will be able to get back to her office on her own. Jae-yun starts to laugh, and Haoyu looks at him, asking why. He apologizes and says that her behavior today is quite different from what he first thought. Haoyu asks how she seemed at first, but Jae-yun can't really answer. Instead, he suggests that they should greet each other whenever they meet, since it's a bit of fate that they work in the same building. Haoyu feels a bit alarmed and isn't sure what's happening, but she decides to go along with it and agrees to his suggestion. She thinks this is going to be harder than she thought. Meanwhile, Seo and Manager Jong are sitting at a cafe, having some drinks. Manager Jong suddenly brings up Miss Seung-hee and asks Seo if there's anything going on between them. Seo admits he hates being the last one to know about these things. He's surprised and asks Manager Jong what made him think that. Manager Jong explains that Miss Seung-hee had given him coffee the day before. After thinking about it, he noticed the rabbit logo on the cup, which is from the cafe Miss Seung-hee often goes to. He also mentions that her cubicle is filled with similar coffee cups. This made him wonder if there's something more going on between them. Manager Jong insists that it really seems like Miss Seung-hee might be interested in Seo. Seo tries to argue, but Manager Jong keeps going. He points out that Miss Seung-hee is usually very direct and hasn't even shared candy with anyone else in the office, yet she gave Seo coffee. He also mentions that it doesn't seem like she has a boyfriend, and if Seo likes her too, they might make a good couple. Manager Jong adds that he heard Seo supported Miss Seung-hee in front of the chief, which makes him think Seo might have feelings for her. Seo is confused and asks why the chief didn't say he has a girlfriend. Manager Jong is surprised and says he thought Seo was single because he doesn't wear a couple ring. Seo points out that neither of them wears rings anyway. Manager Jong then asks if Seo plans to marry his girlfriend. Seo is shocked and doesn't know how to answer. Manager Jong keeps pushing, suggesting that Seo should seriously think about giving Miss Seung-hee a chance. Feeling uncomfortable with the conversation, Seo asks Manager Jong to listen to what he has to say first. But Manager Jong doesn't let up. He talks about how Miss Seung-hee seems very wealthy from her clothes, bags, and high heels, which he sees as signs of her being classy. Seo disagrees, saying that Seung-hee might just like those high-end things for her own reasons. But Manager Jong keeps insisting. He says that Seung-hee wears different expensive brands every day, which seems more than what an accountant could afford, even if they are using credit. Manager Jong tells Seo to trust his judgment and warns him that he might regret missing out on someone like Seung-hee. Seo reminds Manager Jong that he already has a girlfriend, so this discussion doesn't really matter to him. But Manager Jong responds that nowadays, people are always looking for something better. He says it's okay to think about finding someone who might be a better match for marriage. Manager Jong points out that Seo is at an age where marriage is becoming more important. He says Seo might feel guilty about his girlfriend, but marriage is a real possibility. He also mentions a company myth that if an accountant and a salesperson date in the office, they'll end up getting married. He urges Seo to give dating Seung-hee a try for now. Later that evening, Seo is sitting alone in the smoking area, thinking about his chat with Manager Jong. It's not like he's never thought about marriage before. He has always thought about it. He imagines promising to be together for the long haul in front of many people, making their future together feel natural and expected. He thinks about asking each other about their day, caring for the little things they like, and how it wouldn't be too different from how they are now. But because of that one phone call, he's now overthinking things. He's worried that if he brings up marriage too soon, she might push him away. He doesn't want to risk breaking up, which isn't what either of them wants. He feels frustrated and uneasy, like he's walking on eggshells, and he doesn't like this feeling at all. Sometimes, Seo feels a bit angry about all this. He doesn't want to deal with it right now. Nearby, he hears someone making a call. It's Seung-hee. She's telling the caller that she's only 28, and doesn't plan to leave the company. She mentions that she's not seeing anyone at the moment, but clarifies that being single doesn't mean she's against marriage. She just wants to take her time and get to know someone before making a commitment. Seo recognizes her voice and feels a bit guilty for eavesdropping. Seung-hee goes on, saying she's not rushing to move out or start dating right away. She tells the caller she'll think about their suggestion and talk more about it at home before ending the call. Seo comments that her family seems strict. Seung-hee agrees and talks about how her mom is always worried, even though she herself smokes cigarettes sometimes. Seo sympathizes, saying it's natural for parents to worry in such a tough world. Then, Seung-hee asks him if he has plans to get married someday too. Seo is surprised by the question and asks her why she's bringing it up now. He wonders why everyone is talking about marriage today. Seung-hee explains that she's just asking because he mentioned wanting to have a daughter earlier. Seo tells her that he does plan to get married in the future. When she asks if he plans to marry his girlfriend, he says yes. Seung-hee says she thought so and that they seem like a perfect match, which almost makes her a bit jealous. Then, she asks if he plays a particular game on his phone. Seo is surprised and wonders how she knows about it since he usually plays it secretly in his spare time. Seung-hee says she saw it on his phone a few days ago, and asks if he has updated the game. Seo is amazed that she knows he spent a lot of money on upgrading the game. He replies that he just plays it for fun. As they continue talking, Seung-hee mentions that the updated version of the game has new features, and Seo decides to check it out. He comments that it seems like she likes games, and she tells him that she does, especially PC games. But lately, she has been playing mobile games because she's been really into camping. Seo asks if she goes camping too, and she says yes. She talks about the place she went this weekend, describing how nice it was. She explains that it wasn't hard to book a spot there because it's off-season, and that there were lots of animals and other entertainment options. To be honest, Seo doesn't really get it. He can't understand why someone would want to sleep outside uncomfortably when they could just be at home resting comfortably. As soon he talks, he snaps back to reality. He's surprised that he actually thought it would be nice if Haoyu were more like her. Soon he mentions she needs to go back inside to finalize some orders, and that she didn't realize she had spent so much time talking with him. She even didn't get a chance to smoke again. As she heads back into the office, Seo chides himself for the silly thoughts he was having. At home, Haoyu is alone on the sofa. Seo sends her a message saying he'll be having some beer outside before coming home, and tells her to eat without him. Haoyu replies, asking him to bring ice cream for her. She lies down on the sofa, feeling exhausted. She complains about how tedious her work is and how tired she feels. She checks her phone and sees a few messages, knowing they are from her brother. She wonders how he keeps finding her number even though she keeps changing it. It's so tiring for her that she feels like she's going to collapse. Back in the past, when she was living with her brother, he had asked her to make some food. When she brings it to him, he complains that she didn't do it well. She tries to defend herself, but he stands up and starts bullying her, calling her all sorts of names. She looks down at the table and notices his college exam results. They aren't good, and she feels that this might be why he's in such a bad mood. He sees her smiling and gets angry, asking her what's so funny and calling her even more names. He seems ready to pounce on her. Back in the present, she wakes up feeling cold and finds Seo placing an ice cream on her cheek. She had fallen asleep on the sofa. He smells like alcohol, and she reminds him that he said he would only have a beer, but ended up drinking a lot. He defends himself, saying he deserves to drink after working hard for so long. She suggests they go to bed since it's so late. He asks if she isn't going to have the ice cream, mentioning that he bought her favorite flavor, and that there's a lot of it on the table. She wonders why he got so much. He insists that she should eat the ice cream since she didn't have dinner. She says it's too late for that, but he insists she should eat it or he won't go to bed. Finally, she agrees to have the ice cream. As she takes the ice cream, she asks Seo why he drank so much when he knows he has to go to work tomorrow. He says it's fine because he's never been late to work after drinking. While she eats, he asks if it tastes good, and she says it's considerate. He then asks if it's special because he bought it. She replies that it's the same as usual, so there's nothing different about today's ice cream. Seo gets a bit upset, and says all she needs to do is thank him. She finally thanks him, but he doubts it's sincere, so she has to convince him that she really is grateful. Seo then asks her to praise him, and she jokes about whether she should roll on the floor for him. He reaches out and takes her hand, saying he doesn't mean things like that. He looks at her with a pleading expression as he holds her hand. She asks if he ever gets tired of her, noting that he's still the same after 10 years. He picks her up and carries her to the bedroom, asking her what she means by that. He tells her that she's electrifying and every moment with her is refreshing. When he puts her down on the bed, he asks why she'd say that if she's not tired of him. She tells him no and wonders why he's acting this way, saying it wasn't a serious question. She also reminds him not to get on the bed with his outside clothes on. He asks why she says things like that if she's not bored of him, and she just stays silent. A few hours earlier, Seo is at a cafe with his friend, having a drink. He's talking about how his colleagues see him. His friend asks why Seo hasn't mentioned that he's been dating Haoyu for 10 years. Seo says he didn't see any reason to share that information. He explains that people might feel burdened by it and points out that he's also never said he doesn't have a girlfriend. His friend tries to cheer him up, saying that all relationships go through rough patches. He adds that when there's no chance to break up, people just come up with excuses instead. His friend suggests that Seo and Haoyu might be experiencing that too. Seo responds, saying it's odd for someone who's never been in a long-term relationship to give advice. His friend replies that Seo seems smart and jokes that he could even start a class on relationships. He continues, saying it's time for Seo to really think about his situation. He points out that Seo compared Haoyu to someone else today, which suggests he might be tired of her. Seo disagrees, saying he's never grown tired of Haoyu. In fact, the more he learns about her, the more he wants to understand her better. His friend doesn't agree, saying Seo must be tired of her in some ways because there have always been walls between them, even after all these years of dating. Back to the present, Seo tells her that their relationship is special. He says it's not easy for two people who are so different to stay together for so long. He mentions that she always downplays their relationship, which makes it hard for him to connect with her. He says she's always on guard, and when she's not, she keeps her distance like she wants to leave. He asks her why she makes him feel like a stranger. She tries to respond, but he interrupts her, saying he'll never leave her and hugs her tightly. That day, he holds her so tightly, with an expression she's never seen before. He looks almost desperate, like he's trying to convince himself of something. The next morning, she wakes him up and offers him a drink. He has a hangover and feels like he might throw up. She gives him the drink, and he asks for something cold, but she insists he drink what she gave him. As he drinks, she asks if he remembers what happened yesterday. He thinks for a moment and then responds with something that doesn't quite match her question. She starts to walk away, saying she shouldn't have asked him about it in the first place. He stops her and asks her to remind him. She says there's no point talking to someone who can't remember anything. He tells her he does remember something, and when she asks what, he says he remembers the inappropriate things he said. He lies back down, and she tells him she's heading to work. She advises him to take an umbrella because it's going to snow. At the office, he tries hard to remember if he did anything wrong last night. He complains that even if he drinks just a little these days, he easily forgets what happened, no matter how much he tries to recall it. He wonders if he's getting old. All he can think of is the intimate moments they shared, but those are just fragments. He remembers telling her he would never leave her. He realizes that was because of his friend's influence. He got so caught up in the conversation that he said things he shouldn't have. He feels relieved that it doesn't seem to be a big deal, but this morning, when she asked about it, he got worried. Manager Jong interrupts his thoughts, suggesting they go outside for a smoke. As he stands up, he knows that no matter how many excuses he makes, she'll keep asking the same question. He tells himself to be more careful from now on. He sees the other men smoking where the old lady told him not to smoke. He walks over and asks if it's okay to smoke there. Manager Jong tells him it's fine, because the lady isn't around in the afternoons. He's still unsure, so they suggest he could go to the designated smoking area if he's worried. He decides to go there alone. As he walks away, he wonders why they're leaving him by himself like that. While he's smoking, Seung-hee comes over and says hello. They chat briefly, and he mentions it's pretty rough since it's only Tuesday morning. She says it's nice to see he's adjusting well. She explains that their office has a lot of people hired through public recruitment, so they can be a bit cold to newcomers. He replies that his colleagues have been good to him so far. Seung-hee notices a leaf on his head and points it out. He tries to remove it, but ends up putting his hand in the wrong place. She helps him by getting closer to take it off, but he suddenly ruffles his hair roughly. The leaf falls to the ground. His hair is all messy, and he asks if the leaf is gone now. Seung-hee says yes and points out that he removed it a bit roughly. He quickly tells her he has something to finish up in the office, so he has to leave and hurries inside. Seung-hee wonders why he acted that way. She actually had something for him, a winter camping invitation. Later that evening, after work, Seo walks home in the heavy snow. It's snowing more than he expected, and he regrets not bringing an umbrella like Hao-yu told him. Everyone else has an umbrella except him. Suddenly, someone holds an umbrella over him from behind. He turns around and sees Seung-hee. She says it looks like he didn't check the weather forecast, asking if he didn't know it was going to snow. She hands him the invitation, saying she wanted to give it to him earlier, but got another chance now. She explains that it's for a festival that started 2 years ago, and is being held again this year. Since she knows he likes camping, she thought he might enjoy it. There's also a food market, which could be fun. He looks at the invitation and then hands it back to her, thanking her, but saying that his girlfriend doesn't like camping, so he doesn't think he'll go. As they stand together under the umbrella, Hao-yu watches them from her car, her mind racing with thoughts. When Seo tells Seung-hee that he won't be able to go, she says it's a shame, because it's a great place for couples. She regrets mentioning it to him. Just as he's about to respond, Hao-yu walks up and asks what he's doing there. Seo is surprised to see her and asks if she came all the way out in the snow just to meet him. Hao-yu explains that she noticed he didn't have an umbrella, and left work early after her meeting. She turns to Seung-hee, and says they didn't get a chance to introduce themselves the other day. Seung-hee returns the greeting. Hao-yu sees the camping invitation and picks it up. She tells Seung-hee that she must have come all this way just to give it to them. Even though she's not really into those kinds of activities, she says she'll go with Seo. She adds that it might actually be fun. Seung-hee agrees, saying she went last year and had a great time. Seo tells Seung-hee to take care, as he starts to leave with Hao-yu. He notices that Hao-yu gives Seung-hee a quick glance before they go. The next day at work, Seo is lost in thought after their board meeting. He can't shake the feeling that something was off with Hao-yu yesterday. She didn't say much, but he's bothered by it. He remembers that she saw him with Seung-hee in front of the office recently. It wasn't how he wanted things to look, but he didn't expect this reaction. Just then, his team leader interrupts his thoughts, asking how work is going. Seo tells him it's manageable, and that his seniors are helping him out. The team leader mentions that a lot of people would be sad if he quit, and that it would be especially heartbreaking for the female employee in the office. Seo is confused by this last comment, but the team leader quickly brushes it off and changes the subject. As Seo turns around, he hears other workers gossiping about his relationship with Seung-hee. He's shocked and walks angrily over to manager Jong. He asks why the news about his relationship with Seung-hee is being spread, when he's made it clear many times that he has a girlfriend. Manager Jong tells Seo that he never mentioned his relationship to anyone except Minjun. Minjun then says he only told manager No. Manager Jong responds that he only told the deputy team leader. This makes Seo really angry. He tells them that it doesn't matter, it's clear they are all the same. He insists again that there's nothing going on between him and Seung-hee, and that he's tired of the rumors. Manager Jong says Seo is overreacting, and that his reaction is making him seem more suspicious. Seo repeats, for what feels like the 100th time, that he has a girlfriend. He shows them a picture of her, saying that she's even his profile picture. The others believe him after seeing the photo, but manager Jong isn't convinced. He says the picture might be AI generated. Seo tells them to stop it because it's making him more frustrated. Manager Jong explains that he thought Seo was lying about having a girlfriend, because he seems too lazy to be introduced to other women. He points out that Seo doesn't wear a couple ring, hasn't been seen talking to her on the phone, and doesn't even have her as his messenger profile picture. Seo remembers what happened 2 weeks ago. He and Hao-yu are at a restaurant, and he suggests they use a photo they took together as their profile picture on Messenger. But she says no, saying there's no need for that. He asks her why, pointing out that he always uses their photos as his profile picture, and wondering why she won't do the same with his. He says it makes him sad. Hao-yu explains that she doesn't want to show their private life to her colleagues who are on Messenger. Seo is confused and says they've been together for so long. He wonders why she wants to keep it private and says if he were her, he'd be bragging about being her boyfriend. She responds, asking why he's making such a big deal about it if he claims he doesn't like her. In response, Seo decides to take down his own profile picture. Hao-yu tells him to go ahead, and that she doesn't care. So, just like that, he ends up without a profile picture because of this petty argument. Back to the present, Seo had only meant to take down his profile picture temporarily, but he completely forgot and left his account without one. He tells everyone that he doesn't want to cause any trouble, especially since he's still new to the team. He insists that there's nothing going on between him and Seung-hee, and that he's not interested in her at all. As he says this, Seung-hee walks by and obviously hears him. The others apologize and leave Seo alone with Seung-hee. She says she's sorry and tries to take the blame, but he tells her it's his fault. He should have acted properly from the start to avoid this situation. He admits he got too comfortable with the other seniors and forgot that female employees still need to be careful, even if they are on the same team. Seung-hee promises that she won't cause any more trouble for him in the future. At Hao-yu's workplace, she's thinking about what happened the other day. She feels she shouldn't have acted so harshly towards Seung-hee. She got really angry when she saw Seung-hee being close to Seo. Actually, it was more than just anger, she felt anxious. All the small lies, empty promises, and the unease she felt after Seo changed jobs seemed to connect back to Seung-hee. She knows she's being overly sensitive, but seeing Seung-hee up close, she realizes that Seung-hee is even more impressive than she first thought. It's not just about her looks, but also how maturely she handled Hao-yu's childish behavior. Meanwhile, Hao-yu is interrupted by the loud voice of her manager scolding Yerin. He's yelling at Yerin, saying she still doesn't know how to do her job even after working here for a while. Hao-yu is surprised that Yerin is getting chewed out and wonders if this is just an act or if it's for real. She stands up to defend Yerin, saying that everyone starts as an intern or a contract worker, and that the manager should be a bit more lenient. The manager throws the papers down in frustration and tells Yerin that he'll be watching her more closely from now on. Yerin is crying quietly. Hao-yu tells her to stop crying, saying that it won't solve anything. As she bends down to pick up the papers, she says that the former manager could have handed everything over properly, but Yerin's trouble with basic tasks is a real issue. Yerin cries even more, saying that Hao-yu is making her feel worse. They go outside the office and sit in the waiting room. Hao-yu asks if Yerin has calmed down, and Yerin nods. Hao-yu says that the manager is usually a bit quiet, so she shouldn't take it personally. After all, he's just her boss and not that important. Yerin says she's still sad and wonders why the manager would treat her that way. Hao-yu explains that the manager has been kind to her recently, but that doesn't change the fact that Yerin has been making many mistakes at work. She tells Yerin she'll teach her again during lunch, starting with organizing materials. Yerin should pay close attention because if she doesn't do well, she'll be the one getting criticized. Hao-yu says it's not good work ethics to be out of the office for too long. As Hao-yu stands up, she bumps into a man and nearly falls, but he catches her. He apologizes, saying he wasn't watching where he was going, and she tells him it's okay. When she looks up, she sees that it's Moon Jae-yun. He recognizes her and says that her voice sounded familiar. Before she even realizes what happens, Hao-yu accidentally hits Jae-yun in the face. He looks surprised, and she quickly apologizes, saying she didn't mean to do it and asks if he's okay. She then asks about his glasses. Jae-yun tells her that he's lost them, saying he must have left them in his pockets, and now he can't find them. Hao-yu offers to help him look for them, but says they need to get back to the office. Jae-yun says it's fine. He actually wants to buy a new pair, because he doesn't think he'll find the old ones. He apologizes for the trouble and heads back to his office, and Hao-yu advises him to be careful as he walks slowly away. Jae-yun staggers and nearly bumps into some iron, which makes Hao-yu feel uneasy. Yerin asks who he is, noting that he's very good-looking and she didn't know someone like that worked in the building. Hao-yu says he's just someone she knows. Later that evening at Seo's workplace, he is sitting with his seniors discussing things. He asks them to recommend a gym, because he wants to start working out after work. He asks if there's a good gym nearby, as he feels his body is getting heavy. Manager No isn't sure about a good gym nearby. He mentions that since their office is in an older part of town, he doesn't think any new gyms have popped up recently. Manager Minjun suggests a gym he goes to, saying it's run by their chief. He says it's a great place to see the true benefits of working out, and that they offer massages for every part of the body, even the ones that don't get used much in people who haven't exercised in a while. Minjun adds that the people who go there are really nice. Even though the building is old, all the equipment is new and they have good grip, plus it's cheaper than other gyms. Seo agrees and says he'll definitely check it out today. Minjun excitedly runs off, saying he wants to tell the chief they have a new client. Seo wonders why Minjun is in such a hurry. As Minjun runs away, the other managers tell Seo not to go to that gym. They explain that it's not a good place because the older, muscular men there tend to stare at newcomers, and everyone tries to give advice. They say they were misled by Minjun, had a terrible experience, and never went back. The managers tell Seo that even if he's done a bit of exercise, it's nothing compared to what's needed at the chief's gym. They say he won't enjoy working out with such muscular men, and agree with him that he should find another place. They mention they'd even discourage an enemy from going to that gym. Manager No adds that he's heard about a new gym opening near the station, which would be convenient for Seo since he passes by it on his way home. After work, Seo gets a text from manager Minjun, who's disappointed that Seo changed his mind. Seo texts back, promising to visit the gym when he has time. As he sends the message, he feels relieved, thinking he almost made a mistake by agreeing to Minjun's gym. While walking, Seo decides to tell Hao-yu about his plans. He calls her and asks how her day has been. She says she's heading home now. Seo tells her he won't be going straight home, because he's planning to check out the gym. He suggests they have dinner together when he gets back. Hao-yu sounds indifferent, so Seo tells her she needs to eat properly to stay healthy. He also mentions that he knows she doesn't like working out, so he'll handle that part on his own. As he finishes the call, he wonders what Hao-yu would do if she got really sick, because she refuses to exercise, even though she's already so thin. At the gym, Seo walks in and is pleasantly surprised. It's nicer than he expected, clean, with good facilities, and all the equipment he needs. He feels happy as he takes it all in. He goes to the counter and signs up for a month. The receptionist thinks he's really handsome. He heads to the workout area and notices an empty spot on a treadmill. Excited, he rushes over and starts setting up. Just then, he realizes he forgot his AirPods. He looks around and sees Miss Sing-hee working out next to him. He wonders why she's here, remembering their conversation from earlier. He decides to focus on his workout and puts the treadmill on the highest level. As he's about to start running, Sing-hee calls out to him. He slips and falls because of the distraction. People quickly gather around him, asking if he's okay. Seo feels super embarrassed and thinks about asking for a refund. A little while later, he's sitting with Sung-hee, rubbing his ankle. She asks if he's okay and regrets calling out to him. Seo tells her that her call isn't the reason he fell. He adds, surprised, that he didn't know her elder brother runs the gym. Sung-hee says her brother just started the gym, and offers to ask him for a discount for Seo. Seo tells her it's not necessary. He explains that he's embarrassed and doesn't want to come back here anymore. Seung-hee reassures him, saying her brother doesn't have to worry about paying rent because the building belongs to her mother. Seo is surprised and realizes that what manager Jong said earlier was true. Seung-hee asks him to keep this information private at the company, and Seo agrees. She tells him to stay there until he feels better, and assures him that he hasn't caused her any trouble at work. Then, she says goodbye and leaves. When Seo gets home, he announces his arrival. Hao-yu asks why he's so late, and if he showered at the gym. He drops his phone beside her and says no, mentioning that he didn't even get to work out. Hao-yu wonders why he came back so late if he didn't exercise. Just then, Seo's phone beeps with a new message. Hao-yu tells him he has a text and offers to check it for him, as Seo is curious about who is texting him at this hour. Hao-yu looks at Seo's phone and sees that the message is from Seung-hee. She opens it and reads that Seung-hee is checking if Seo is feeling better, and has also arranged for a 1-month discount at the gym. Hao-yu is surprised and asks Seo when he started going to the same gym as Seung-hee. Seo tells Hao-yu that what she thinks isn't right. He explains that it was just a coincidence he ended up at the same gym as Seung-hee. Hao-yu wonders why it had to be Seung-hee, and why he got a message from her at this time. Seo feels that Hao-yu doesn't know why he hurt his leg and thinks it's fair to explain. He tries to explain, but she doesn't really listen to him. Then, Hao-yu asks if he has feelings for Seung-hee. Seo is surprised by her question. Hao-yu says that Seung-hee is interested in him and really wants to go out with him. Seo tries to cut her off before she says more. Seo then asks if he's ever caused a misunderstanding with a woman before. He says he has always handled things before they became a problem for her. He's confused about why she still doesn't believe him if she's never noticed anything wrong before. Hao-yu then brings up the time he bought coffee. She says that he has never bought hot coffee before and tells him he should be better at lying. She explains that when he gave that excuse, she started to worry and felt belittled. She says that was the moment she began to have doubts about him. Seo is really frustrated. He tells Hao-yu that he couldn't refuse the drink because of a personal reason and apologizes for lying. When he stands up, Hao-yu asks him what he's sorry for. She wonders if it's because he couldn't say no to such a simple offer. Seo says he didn't want to make a big deal out of something small, and didn't want her to worry over nothing. Hao-yu asks if it's her fault that he lied. Seo gets upset with her reaction. He feels like he's always walking on eggshells around her, like she's just waiting for him to mess up. He tells her it feels like he's on thin ice whenever he's with her. Hao-yu walks toward the door, clearly angry. She calls out to him, but Seo refuses to stop. He says it's not like they want to be around each other right now and tells her that he'll sleep at his parents' house tonight before shutting the door behind him. The next day at Hao-yu's workplace, she's lost in her thoughts and doesn't hear when Yerin tells her about the big improvements she's made at work. When she finally notices, she tells Yerin she did a great job and commends her for the progress. Yerin is really happy and says that it's her first compliment at work. She notices that Hao-yu seems distracted and hasn't eaten yet, so she asks if something is wrong. Hao-yu says she needs to talk about something personal. On the rooftop, Hao-yu asks Yerin if it's true that her boyfriend got involved with someone else. Yerin says yes, explaining that her boyfriend never lets her touch his phone, so she kind of saw it coming. Hao-yu realizes that Seo never stopped her from looking at his phone. Hao-yu asks if that's why Yerin broke up with him. Yerin shakes her head and says that they are still together. Even though she knows he's with another girl, she can't bring herself to end the relationship, and she wonders if she's being foolish. Hao-yu reassures her that she's not foolish and understands that ending a relationship like that is tough. Yerin brings up what Hao-yu said earlier about her being pretty and decent. She tells Hao-yu that those words made her think about whether she was too dependent on her boyfriend, and if she was letting his attitude control her life. She decides that she will work on being more independent, and when she feels ready, she will end the relationship. Hao-yu feels glad that she could help Yerin. She thinks about how she used to be quite contradictory. She hoped her boyfriend wouldn't leave her, but was also preparing for the possibility of a breakup. She didn't really consider his feelings while relying on him a lot. She had been taking his presence and role in their relationship for granted, even though she knew that nothing should be taken for granted. Yerin, on the other hand, is relieved that it's not snowing anymore. Hao-yu gets a message on her phone from Sol-yi, asking her to come to the first floor. She wonders why Sol-yi needs her urgently. She tells Yerin to head back to the office because it's cold and apologizes for making her come outside for no reason. When Hao-yu reaches the first floor, she sees Sol-yi waving to her from a door. Hao-yu walks over and asks what Sol-yi needs. Sol-yi shows her a staff identity card, saying it belongs to Jae-yun, and asks if Hao-yu knows him. Hao-yu says she does know him and asks where Sol-yi found the card. Sol-yi says she found Jae-yun's card in the office cafeteria. She mentions that Miss Yerin told her that Hao-yu knows Jae-yun, and asks if she knows if he has a girlfriend. Hao-yu responds that she doesn't know, and that they are not very close. She wonders if Sol-yi called her all the way there just to ask that. Sol-yi then asks if Hao-yu can call Jae-yun, and ask him herself. She says she's been keeping an eye on him, and that he's her type. Hao-yu reminds Sol-yi about the work she still needs to deliver, suggesting she should focus on that. Sol-yi promises to finish the work and submit it if Hao-yu asks Jae-yun for her. Just then, Jae-yun appears from behind and answers the question himself. He says he doesn't have a girlfriend, takes his card back from Sol-yi, and thanks her for holding onto it. He explains that he had taken it off in the cafeteria and couldn't find it again. When Sol-yi asks how long he's been there, Jae-yun says he could hear everything from his office. Hao-yu feels really embarrassed, quickly tells him that they should leave, and apologizes for the interruption, as she pushes Sol-yi out with her. Jae-yun tells her to wait a moment and hands her a pack of bandages. He says he noticed her right heel was scraped a bit since she doesn't usually wear heels. He encourages her to use the bandages if she wears heels again. She looks at the bandages and wonders how he saw the scrape on her heel. As they walk away, Sol-yi asks if there's something going on between her and Jae-yun. She says Jae-yun's eyes seem to have hearts in them. Hao-yu is surprised by the question, and says she has a boyfriend. She explains that she's only acquainted with Jae-yun because he's her boyfriend's high school friend. Sol-yi responds that it doesn't matter if Hao-yu has a boyfriend. She says even if someone has been dating for years, they can still attract others as long as they aren't married. She points out that Hao-yu has never shown off her boyfriend, so she doubts whether she really has one. Hao-yu gets annoyed and asks if Sol-yi is implying that she flirts with men. Sol-yi clarifies that's not what she meant. She says Hao-yu is so pretty that many men have asked for her number. Hao-yu, not wanting to continue this conversation, tells Sol-yi to focus on the work she was supposed to submit. She wonders why Sol-yi is wasting time on such irrelevant topics. She walks away angrily, and Sol-yi mutters a curse under her breath. Later that evening, after work is over, Hao-yu is walking through the snow. She wanted to leave right after work, but she got held up by a lot of thoughts. So many things happened yesterday. It's colder than she expected, and she didn't bring her car because of the snow. She doesn't want to take a bus, but calling a taxi feels too extravagant. Waiting for another bus, or transferring to a different one would take forever. Lost in her thoughts, someone grabs her hand from behind. He asks her why she's so late, and says he thought he might freeze waiting for her. It's Seo. She's surprised to see him there and asks why he's here. He says he wanted to talk to her properly yesterday, but just left, so he came to apologize. She tells him to forget it and hurry up and go, pushing him away. He looks confused and says that he came all the way here, and now she wants him to leave. She keeps pushing him and tells him to go quickly. He says she's being mean, he apologized first, and now she's treating him like this. He says she should at least listen to why he was late yesterday. She tells him it's not about what happened yesterday. Just then, a voice interrupts her, asking what she's doing outside instead of going home. It's her team leader. Hao-yu freezes and asks shakily if her team leader is getting off work now. The team leader asks who is with her. As Hao-yu struggles to answer, Seo steps in and introduces himself as her boyfriend. The team leader is surprised and introduces herself as Hao-yu's senior at work. She compliments Seo, saying she thought he was a celebrity. Seo replies, saying that the team leader is also beautiful. The team leader then asks Hao-yu why she never introduced her boyfriend, and Hao-yu stays silent. The team leader says goodbye and leaves. Seo asks her if there's anyone else working late at her office so he'll know if he needs to introduce himself to more people. Hao-yu is upset and shouts at him, reminding him that she told him not to come to her office. He replies that she always goes to his office unexpectedly, so he wonders why he can't do the same. She insists that he can't. He then asks if she's acting this way because she's embarrassed of him, and if that's also why she hasn't updated her Messenger profile. She asks if it makes sense to him, and if he really doesn't know, or is pretending not to know. He's confused and doesn't understand what she's talking about. She tells him he stands out a lot and worries about what will happen if he meets her colleagues like this. Seo asks if it's really such a big deal for him to meet her colleagues, and she says yes. She says it's a problem because he's. She trails off, and he urges her to finish her sentence. She finally says it's because he's too handsome. They fall silent for a moment, and he smiles widely. He asks her to repeat what she just said, holding her hand as she tries to walk away, feeling embarrassed. He insists she repeats it, staying close and bugging her. He tells her it's the first time she's said something like that. She disagrees, but he insists it's the first time he's heard it from her, and he thought he wasn't as handsome as people say. Seo says it finally feels real, and she regrets saying that. He suggests they go home. Back at home, they are in the bathtub together. Seo explains why he came home late the previous night. He tells her he had to go to the hospital because of his injury. No orthopedic clinics were open at that time, so he had no choice. He asks if this clears up the misunderstanding, and if she now knows he doesn't have feelings for anyone else. She says yes, it does. Seo then asks her why she really doesn't want him to meet her colleagues. He says he didn't realize it would bother her so much. As he asks, her mind goes back to a while ago when they first started dating. She had gone to Seo's college for the first time. Everyone around them was staring, but it felt like they were really staring at her. She could almost hear them whispering no matter where they went. Back then, everyone was surprised that Seo was dating her. They said she didn't fit with his looks, that she was too tall, and that they'd probably break up soon. She didn't have much time to be hurt by their comments because she was always busy. Even after 10 years, she still feels awkward introducing Seo to her colleagues. She realizes now that her old insecurities are still lingering, even if she didn't notice them before. Back in the present, Seo asks her again for the real reason why she doesn't want him to meet her colleagues. He says he's not buying her excuse about him being handsome. She explains that she just wants to go to work without drawing too much attention. She worries about how much fuss her team leader will make now that she's seen him. She admits she's really bad at keeping secrets. Seo says that sounds like her, and he teases her a bit. She adds that sometimes she wishes she could be invisible so no one would notice her. Seo jokingly asks if he should just not see her anymore. She smiles and says he can still come over and buy her ice cream while she stays at home. After their bath, Seo helps her dry her hair with the hair dryer. He comments that he wonders how women manage with long hair. She tells him he'd get used to it if he had long hair, but he disagrees. He notices a bandage on the table and asks if she got hurt. She explains that it's from Mr. Jae-yun, who works in the same building as her. Seo asks if she means his old classmate, and she says yes. She tells him that Jae-yun gave her the bandages because her skin got scraped by her heels. She mentions that she's run into him a few times since then. Seo notices the bruises and asks if they don't hurt, saying she should have been more careful. She doesn't want to tell him she got hurt trying to copy Miss Seung-hee's style by wearing heels, so she says she thinks she just wore the wrong shoes. Meanwhile, Seo wonders why Jae-yun was looking at her feet, but decides to ignore it. He starts massaging her legs to help her relax. The next morning, Hao-yu is having a nightmare and murmuring in her sleep. Seo lies down beside her and hugs her tightly, telling her it's okay. When she wakes up, he asks if she had a nightmare since she was mumbling words he couldn't understand. Seeing him almost fully dressed, she suddenly wakes up fully and asks if she overslept and why he didn't wake her up for work. Seo smiles and explains that he woke up early because he was told to go to work early, as the company director would be there. She feels a bit embarrassed and asks if she really talked in her sleep. He says yes and asks what she was dreaming about that made her grumble like that. She replies that she can't remember. He then tells her he'll be late today because there's a company dinner. They've suddenly decided to throw a welcome party for him. As she's about to respond, she starts to stammer and holds her stomach. He asks what's wrong, and she says her stomach suddenly hurts. He thinks it might be her cycle and suggests she go to the washroom. She tells him it's not that, but she heads to the bathroom anyway. She starts to think it might be her period and realizes she doesn't have a pad. When she comes out of the bathroom, she feels a bit embarrassed because her stomach wasn't actually hurting that badly. She notices a bag on the table that wasn't there before. Curious, she opens it and finds a pack of sanitary pads. He had actually bought the right ones. Back in the present, in the prison interview room, the reporter asks her if that was the day. She says yes. It was an ordinary day, just like any other, but it unexpectedly became the start of everything. In the evening, at the welcome dinner, everyone seems a bit down. Seo asks what's wrong and wonders if something happened. They tell him that it seems like he doesn't know. Seo asks what they mean, and they ask him what he thinks of their team leader. He says that the team leader is okay. He admits that the team leader does push people to work hard, but he also gets his work done efficiently and rarely works late. Manager No agrees, saying that the team leader is good and doesn't act like a typical older person. However, Manager No points out that the team leader has a drinking habit and asks if Seo also enjoys drinking when he can handle alcohol. Seo replies that he learned a drinking trick at his previous job. The others say he shouldn't be the one talking about that. As they are chatting, the team leader walks in and greets everyone, telling them not to stand up. He says they should start the party. The team leader grabs a full glass of beer and dares everyone to drink it in one go. Everyone starts drinking. Seo starts to feel unwell and realizes why the seniors seemed unhappy. He can't finish his drink and decides he wants to leave. The team leader pats Seo on the back and insists that he finish the drink, saying it wouldn't be right for the main person at the party to leave some drink in the glass. Seo quickly grabs the glass and chugs the beer, pretending he didn't notice the leftover. The team leader smiles and pats him on the back, saying he really likes Seo because he learns quickly and is handsome. Seo feels like he might throw up and wishes the team leader would stop hitting him. His colleagues tell him he's drinking really well, so they decide to pour him another shot. After a while, everyone is drunk and still sitting at the table. The team leader's phone rings, and he stands up to take the call outside, telling them to keep having fun. Manager Jong and Manager No also get up to go smoke outside. Seo is tired and wants to go home. It's already past 11, and he wants to let Hao-yu know that he'll be late. He clumsily searches for his phone on the table, but can't find it. Seung-hee hands him his phone, saying she held onto everyone's phones since they kept dropping them. She compliments him on handling the team leader well. Seo looks out the window and sees that it's snowing again. He remembers that it was snowing the day he wanted to break up with Ha-yu. A few years ago, they are walking down the street together. She's complaining that he's late again. She asks if he could borrow a test machine from the lab for her. He wonders why she just can't use it once and for all. She explains that they have to follow the lab's schedule, and they can't buy the machine because it's too expensive and way beyond their budget. At this time, she's in graduate school and is always tired. He asks if she has any plans for the weekend. She says no, that she just wants to go home and rest quickly. He pulls out 2 tickets for the movie she's been wanting to see, suggesting they go watch it together. She turns him down, saying she's just too tired. He asks if something happened, and she says it's just the lab work that's tiring her out, so he shouldn't worry about it. He's not happy with her response. He tells her that she always acts like this whenever they meet and asks how he's supposed to not care. She tells him to be quiet, saying she hasn't even complained. He asks why she never tells him anything, even when something is wrong, and if she knows how distant she gets when it happens. She replies that even if she told him, he wouldn't be able to help. He's frustrated and sarcastically says he's sorry for not being helpful, asking if he's only supposed to pick her up. She replies that she never asked him to do that. They are both upset, and in the end, they have a serious argument. He impulsively decides to break up with her before Christmas. As he sees her approaching from a distance, he's ready to say it. But before he can, she suddenly collapses on the ground, surprising him. She's quickly taken to the hospital and is being treated. The doctor gives him a report, saying she's been overworking herself and is even malnourished. Her body is very weak, so it's best if she stays in the hospital for at least a day, even after receiving fluids. Seo sits beside her, looking very worried. Suddenly, she wakes up and calls his name, trying to sit up. He tells her to stay lying down and asks how she feels. She sadly tells him that her research material was stolen. She had given it to her senior, who's working on a PhD, to review her paper. She tells him through her tears that she knew the senior was favored by a professor, but she didn't realize he would put himself as the main author in a journal. As she cries, he tries to comfort her. Surprisingly, instead of feeling angry, sad, or sorrowful, he feels an ecstatic relief he's never experienced before. In that moment, he understands the true value of his presence in her life. Back in the present at the bar, he asks Seung-hee if she's interested in him. She's taken aback and asks him to repeat the question. When she doesn't get a repeat, she finally answers yes, saying she is interested. He then tells her that he's been dating his girlfriend for 10 years. She's shocked. He explains that she initially thought she needed him, but in reality, she didn't need anyone. It was him who couldn't live without her, though he was too proud to admit it. Because of this, he plans to stick by her side and begs her not to like him. He's finally found the answer he's been searching for, so with a lighter heart, he lets go of the feelings he was holding on to. Seo is seen sleeping in bed. As he sleeps, he feels that the room is too hot. He wonders why Ha-yu set the boiler so high, especially since she's always complaining about the heating bills. Seo wakes up feeling too warm and wonders if Ha-yu turned up the heat, because it snowed today. The room feels uncomfortably hot, and he thinks the heat might be making him feel unwell. Sleepily, he tries to wake up to ask her to lower the temperature. When he finally opens his eyes, he's surprised to see who's lying next to him. He's confused and wonders why they are there. Seo wakes up and is surprised to see Miss Seung-hee next to him. He looks around and realizes he's in a hotel. He sits up, trying to remember what happened, but nothing comes to mind. He can't believe he might have done something with Seung-hee. He decides that nothing must have happened, but he still feels uneasy about being here with her. Hearing some noises behind him, he decides he should leave quickly. As he looks around, he notices his clothes on the floor and wonders why they are there. He feels like he might have done something unnecessary. He quickly gets dressed and checks his phone. There are messages from Hao-yu, and he realizes she must be worried because he didn't contact her. As he heads for the door, he wishes he could handle this situation as well as she does. The next morning, Hao-yu wakes up alone and sees that it's already past 6. She picks up her phone to call Seo, wondering if he's still asleep since he didn't get in touch. When he answers, she asks him where he slept because he didn't come home last night. Seo explains that he drank too much and had to stay in a nearby place since the dinner spot was close by. Hao-yu asks Seo if he'll be staying at the hotel for the weekend, and he says yes. He'll be there until the weekend is over. She tells him to rest well and turns on the TV to watch something. She guesses that people at his company drink a lot since he said he might be late, but they made him drink so much that he couldn't even call her. She thinks it's unfortunate, but she knows her own company is the same way. After a few hours of watching TV and scrolling through social media alone, she starts to feel really bored. She used to think she could handle spending time alone well, but now she feels the opposite. With Seo not around to chat with her, she's tired of both social media and TV. She wonders if there's anything more interesting to do. She looks online for some exercises and decides to give them a try, hoping they'll be easy. She starts exercising, but after just 5 minutes, she feels exhausted. Hao-yu thinks she might not be able to keep up with the exercises, especially since she started them because of Seo. But she decides she should try to exercise more often whenever she has time. She also considers suggesting they go on vacation together next week since it's been a while since they've had a break. At Seo's house, he's sitting and smoking, thinking about how he messed up by lying to Hao-yu. He feels he should have admitted earlier that he was bothered by Miss Seung-hee, but it was nothing more than that, and even that felt wrong, so he pretended it wasn't an issue and avoided facing it. Now he's wondering what to do next. He's afraid that if he tells Hao-yu the truth, she might break up with him. Suddenly, someone hits him on the head from behind, saying his lungs will rot. It's his mother. She's upset and asks why he's been sitting there smoking all day, saying she's embarrassed to even see the neighbors. Trying to hide the cigarette, he asks why she's still hitting him even though he's grown up. She asks if he had a fight with his girlfriend, because he looks so down. He tells her everything is fine and asks if she's going somewhere. She tells him to come with her and says he's going with her. They pull up to a car showroom, and Seo wonders why they are here. He tells his mom that he would have changed his clothes if he had known they were coming to a car dealership. She tells him to pick out a car he likes. Seo is surprised and says he already has a car, the one they bought for him when he graduated, but he doesn't use it because he usually takes the subway. She tells him that car is old since it was second-hand, so she wants him to pick a new one. Seo refuses, saying he doesn't have the money for that. She replies that she has been saving up money secretly, and insists that he should choose one now that he has the chance. Seo feels embarrassed and says he's okay with his old car. Seo suggests that she should buy the car for his older sister instead. She tells him that she wanted to get a car for his sister to congratulate her for starting a business, but his sister decided not to get married. His mother is very upset and can't believe her own daughter made such a decision, which makes her very angry. Seo explains that his sister has always been like this, and suggests she should just accept it. He wonders who would want to live with someone so difficult. Then he asks his mother why she suddenly wants to buy him a car. She says that he once mentioned he plans to marry his girlfriend, and that he'll need a big car if they want to have children. She tells him it's about time he introduces them to his girlfriend since they've been dating for 10 years. She adds that she wants to see the kind of person she is and mentions how pretty she looks in photos. The car dealer then suggests showing them a family car, and his mom immediately agrees, pointing out one she likes. But when she turns around, she notices Seo crying. Concerned, she asks him what's wrong. Seo, struggling to speak through his tears, says he doesn't feel like he deserves to receive things like that. He quietly admits that he wishes he could be more like Hao-yu, at least for now. It's Monday morning, and Hao-yu is sitting at her desk in the office. Her senior colleague leans over and starts chatting about Hao-yu's boyfriend. She's surprised to hear that he works for such a big company and is handsome too. Hao-yu explains that he recently changed jobs. The senior then suggests that they should get married soon while they are still young, so Hao-yu doesn't lose him. Some of the other colleagues find the senior a bit nosy, but they are starting to believe that Hao-yu actually has a boyfriend. The senior keeps giving advice, saying Hao-yu should be careful not to let anyone take him away. Hao-yu responds that they'll figure things out. She's feeling a bit drained because her senior has been talking about Seo since Friday. The senior tries to encourage her, but Hao-yu doesn't quite understand what she means. Then the senior says she thinks Hao-yu might feel a bit intimidated because her boyfriend is so handsome. She reassures Hao-yu that she's beautiful too, pointing out that plenty of men have tried to win her over. The senior tells Hao-yu to stand tall and not feel insecure. She even imagines how beautiful Hao-yu and her boyfriend will look at their wedding and insists Hao-yu should give her the first wedding invitation. Hao-yu quickly agrees, eager to change the subject. She's tired of the discussion and wants to move on. Just as she brings up another topic, she overhears their manager scolding Yerin for making mistakes in her work. Hao-yu feels like Yerin might cry, but she decides not to step in this time because it would feel awkward. Surprisingly, Yerin doesn't cry. Instead, she apologizes to the manager, explaining that it's her first time doing that task, so she's not sure how to do it, but promises to ask Hao-yu for help. Both the team leader and Hao-yu are surprised that Yerin didn't cry, but Hao-yu is more concerned about the fact that Yerin said she'd ask her for help. Yerin assures the manager that she'll be careful from now on, and he walks away angrily, telling her to make sure it doesn't happen again. Later, Hao-yu and Yerin are sitting together outside, talking about what happened earlier. Yerin tells her that she's all right, explaining that the manager has been acting like that towards her for a while, so it's not the first time, and she doesn't think she needs to cry every time. Hao-yu asks her if she's really all right, and if she did anything to upset the manager, because he's always been mean to her. Yerin replies that she's not sure, maybe he just doesn't like her. Yerin adds that everyone in the office seems to hate her, so she doesn't mind having one more person on the list, but she hopes Hao-yu doesn't hate her. She mentions that she comes to work because of Hao-yu. Hao-yu looks at her silently, realizing that she really can't hate her, but she knows she should still point some things out. She asks Yerin if she told Sol-yi that she knew Jae-yun, and Yerin says yes, asking if she wasn't supposed to mention that. Hao-yu tells her that she doesn't want her to talk about such personal matters when she's not around because Sol-yi misunderstood her. Yerin quickly apologizes, saying she didn't do it on purpose. Hao-yu explains that she's just giving her some advice, suggesting that Yerin be more careful to avoid becoming a topic of gossip in the office. Yerin takes this moment to ask for more advice, saying Hao-yu should tell her everything and not leave anything out because she's okay with it. Hao-yu is surprised by the request, but goes ahead and gives her advice, mentioning that Yerin might want to change her style of dressing. Yerin is shocked that she brought it up. Hao-yu quickly adds that it's not that Yerin dresses badly, but her outfits make her stand out, which ends up making her a topic of conversation in the office. Yerin decides to take the advice to heart and promises that she'll work on changing the way she dresses. Later that evening, after work, Seo is standing outside his office, feeling unsure about what to do. He wonders if he should make another excuse to avoid going home, still not feeling confident enough to face Hao-yu. Suddenly, someone calls his name. It's Hao-yu. He's surprised and asks her why she's here without telling him. She looks puzzled and reminds him that she had texted him earlier about having dinner near his office. He's caught off guard, admitting that he didn't see the text. Hao-yu then tells him that she's thought about it, and from now on, they can visit each other's offices whenever they want. She says it's perfectly fine for him to come by her office anytime. Seo is surprised by her decision and is about to respond when someone calls his name from behind. It's Miss Seung-hee. She spots How Are You and stops in her tracks. Seo quickly tells Miss Seung-hee that he's leaving and that they'll see each other at work the next day. How Are You watches her with suspicious eyes. Seo tries to shift her attention by saying he also wanted to eat out, asking her what she wants to eat. But she doesn't reply, still lost in thought. He asks her what she's looking at, but she's deep in her own thoughts, struggling to believe what's in front of her. She thinks to herself that blindly believing in something without clear reasoning isn't something she does. Even though these moments can feel unsettling, she reminds herself that they are just coincidences. In that moment, the happiness How Are You had felt since the weekend suddenly disappears. A feeling of unease creeps in, and she becomes certain that something is off between Seo and Miss Seung-hee. Acting on impulse, she pulls Seo closer and kisses him. He's caught off guard, asking her what she's doing. As they kiss, Miss Seung-hee glances back, sees them, and then turns away, continuing her walk. Seo, a bit shaken, asks why she did that, worried that someone from his office might see them. Without answering, How Are You starts dragging him in a different direction. He's confused and reminds her that the restaurant is the other way. She asks if his office is empty, and he nods, saying everyone has gone home. She tells him to open the door. Seo opens the office door, and they step inside. How Are You immediately starts kissing him, but he hesitates, asking her to stop and suggesting they go home instead. She pulls back slightly and asks if something is bothering him, but he insists there's nothing wrong. She studies his face and asks again, but he sticks to his answer, leaning in to kiss her as they begin to make out. Deep down, Seo knows she's quick to pick up on things, and she must be quietly frustrated. She has no solid evidence, though, and he's aware of how much she hates feeling this way. He feels a strange mix of relief and guilt that she doesn't know the full truth. At the same time, he wishes she would just get angry with him, because he knows he's stuck and can't change anything. He finds himself longing for time to rewind, to undo everything that's happened. Later, as they head home, the atmosphere is awkward. How Are You walks ahead of him, and Seo, trying to break the silence, asks if she's okay with skipping dinner. She simply says yes, and he knows neither of them is really in the mood to eat. She suddenly tells him that he could go to his parents' house, and he's surprised by her suggestion, wondering why she's bringing it up now. She asks him to listen and questions why he stays with her when he seems so uncomfortable around her. He's left speechless, knowing that this isn't something she'd usually say. The truth is, there wouldn't be much of an issue if he really did go. In fact, a part of him wants to escape, but he finally speaks up, telling her he's not going anywhere, and that he wants to stay with her. He wraps his arms around her from behind. How Are You tells him that she understands things haven't been perfect between them, and she knows she hasn't given him much attention lately. She's aware that he's tried hard not to let her misunderstand, and it's clear that they both need to talk. How Are You tells him that she believes people can develop feelings for someone else if they've been with the same person for a long time. She admits that she might be the same way. Then, she looks at him and asks if he was really with Miss Seung-hee last Friday. Her question catches him off guard, and his mind races. He wonders if she'd forgive him if he confessed now, but deep down, he knows she wouldn't, and he can't even forgive himself. So, he lies, saying he really went home that day. He explains that he understands why she might be suspicious since he was out of contact, and then asks if that's why she's upset. How Are You just looks at him, then apologizes, saying she was being a bit sensitive. Seo pulls her into a hug and apologizes instead. He knows he's acting deceitfully, and it makes him sick, but right now, all he cares about is keeping her close. The next day at work, Miss Seung-hee greets Seo, but he quickly replies and walks away. She tries hard to strike up a conversation, but he avoids her every time. After work, Seo heads home. When he walks in, he sees the table set with a variety of dishes, and he's puzzled. He asks how are you if today is a special day, since it's not his birthday, hers, or even their anniversary. How are you tells him that it's not a special day, and asks him to just sit down and stop making a big deal out of it. Seo insists, saying the fancy meal is making him nervous, so she should just tell him what's going on. She starts to feel embarrassed and admits she did it because she felt bad about yesterday, when he didn't eat because of her. She asks why he always has to question everything, especially when he probably already knows the reason, and why he can't just let some things go. But in reality, Seo truly didn't know why she had prepared the meal. Embarrassed, Hao-yu walks into the room, leaving him surprised by her reaction. Realizing how she feels, Seo follows her inside to apologize and bring her back to the table. Later that night, Hao-yu tries to sleep, but Seo is hugging her tightly, clinging to her in bed. She looks at him, thinking about how he annoyed her earlier, but also feeling bad for being so sensitive yesterday. Then, Seo's phone chimes. Curious, she wonders who could be texting him so late. She reaches for the phone but hesitates, deciding not to check without his permission. She doesn't want to start a fight over nothing. But as the night drags on, her curiosity grows. It's past 2 a.m. when she finally decides to see the message. Sitting up in bed, she opens the phone. The text is from Miss Seung-hee, apologizing for texting so late and saying it bothered her that he avoided her all day. She adds that he doesn't have to worry, and she'll just pretend nothing happened after the company dinner. Hao-yu can't believe what she's reading. It's morning, and Seo's alarm goes off, waking him up. He reaches out, but Hao-yu isn't beside him. Confused, he wonders where she could be. As he gets dressed for work, he tries calling her, but there's no answer. Worried, he keeps dialing her number, but her phone is still on the bed. She left without it. His concern grows, thinking about where she could have gone and why she isn't answering. He notices the car keys are still there, so she didn't drive to work. Just as he starts to think something bad might have happened and even considers calling the police, the door opens. Hao-yu walks in, looking exhausted and disheveled. He rushes to her, asking where she went and why she left her phone behind, saying he was worried sick when he woke up and she wasn't there. He gently guides her into the room, noticing how cold she feels. Concerned, he asks what she's been doing. After a moment, she finally responds, saying she walked around all morning, trying to clear her head. But no matter how much she thinks about it, she can only come to one conclusion. Seo is confused, not understanding what she means. Then she looks at him and asks, once again, if he was with Seung-hee on the night of the company dinner. His heart sinks, and he knows this is it, he can't keep lying. It doesn't matter how she found out, he can't deceive her any further. It would be even more unforgivable. Finally, he admits the truth, saying yes, they were together. Hao-yu is furious. She hits Seo and demands to know why he would do this to her. Seo tries to explain, saying he didn't mean for it to happen, and that he just woke up in that situation without remembering much. Hao-yu starts crying, and he comforts her, apologizing over and over again. Later, at work, Seo arrives late, and his team leader tells him not to let it happen again. Seo apologizes and heads to the smoking area to clear his mind. Miss Seung-hee shows up and asks if he didn't see her text. He says he didn't. She tells him what the text said, explaining that he doesn't need to avoid her. Seo quickly checks his phone and sees the message. He turns to her, upset, and asks why she had to send it so late, especially when she could have just talked to him directly. She explains that since he had been avoiding her, she had no choice. He questions why she's sending him messages late at night, asking if she didn't think his girlfriend would be upset. She apologizes, saying she didn't realize Hao-yu would see the messages, and thought he'd be alone by then. She asks for his forgiveness. Seo tells Miss Seung-hee that he hopes she won't bring up the company dinner again in the future. He suggests they keep personal matters to a minimum. Miss Seung-hee apologizes again, as he walks away. Seo is still angry and wonders if she's just naive or foolish. Meanwhile, Miss Seung-hee thinks he's avoiding her because he's embarrassed. Later that evening, after work, Seo goes home only to find his things outside the door. It looks like Ha-yu has changed the entrance password. He bangs on the door and calls for Ha-yu, saying she should have at least left him a note or some pictures with his stuff. He accuses her of being heartless for cutting him off like this. Inside, Ha-yu is sleeping peacefully. Seo tells her he's sorry and asks if she can at least let him explain. He says he'll stay outside and wait until they can talk face to face. Seo is seen standing on the street. It's been almost a week, and he has come even on weekends. He wants to stop coming, but feels he should keep trying since he believes he's in the wrong. A lady asks him for directions, mentioning an address that seems familiar. He turns to her, and she says she's visiting her daughter's house for the first time. Seo tells the lady that she's at the right place. She's relieved and says she's been driving around in circles for a while. As he leads her to the building, he mentions that there's no elevator and offers to carry her stuff. He asks which room she's going to, and she says room 301. Seo is surprised to hear that's Ha-yu's room. He asks her name, and she tells him it's Ha-yu. Seo quickly introduces himself as Ha-yu's boyfriend and greets her warmly. He asks if she's bringing fast food for Ha-yu, mentioning that she works late on Mondays. He offers to take the food if she prefers. She says she's fine and just wants to see her daughter's face since it's been a while. She compliments him, saying he's good-looking and that Ha-yu is lucky to have him. Seo wonders if Ha-yu has reconnected with her family, since she mentioned cutting ties earlier. Standing outside, the lady suggests that Seo open the door so they can go inside and get out of the cold. Seo is about to tell the lady that he doesn't know the entrance code, but he stops when he sees Ha-yu coming home from work. Ha-yu asks her mother what she's doing at her building and how she got there. Her mother gets close and asks why Ha-yu hasn't been answering her calls. She says it took her a while to find her and asks if she's been okay. Ha-yu pushes her mother's hand away and tells her to leave. Seo tries to step in, explaining that her mother came because of him, but Ha-yu keeps shouting at her mother, telling her to go away and not come back. Seo asks Ha-yu why she's acting like this and shouting so much. Ha-yu tells him not to get involved because he doesn't understand what's going on. This upsets him a bit, but he tries to calm her down. Ha-yu refuses to calm down, insisting that her mother should leave and threatening to call the police if she doesn't. Ha-yu goes inside, and Seo tries to stop her, but her mother tells him to let it go, saying Ha-yu won't listen to him. Her mother suggests they go get a cup of coffee, saying she wants to understand who her daughter is spending time with. At the coffee shop, they sit down together and start talking. Ha-yu's mother tells Seo that she made mistakes. She was so focused on making money while Ha-yu was growing up that she didn't pay enough attention to her. Seo asks about Ha-yu's brother, and her mother says he's doing okay. He might be a bit immature, but he takes care of her. She adds that she doesn't expect Ha-yu to look after her like her brother does. All she wants is to keep in touch with her daughter. Ha-yu's mother goes on to say that Ha-yu was always sensitive and unstable when she was younger. She wishes she had noticed it sooner and taken her to the hospital. She's glad that Ha-yu is dating someone normal like Seo. Seo is surprised to hear this. They continue chatting, and she asks him about his background, his parents, and what kind of work they do. Seo answers all her questions. She then gives him the food she brought for Ha-yu, telling him to eat it because she made it herself. Seo decides he'll take it to Ha-yu. Ha-yu's mother suggests that they both eat the food together since they are getting married. She comments that Haoyu was angry with him for no reason and praises him for staying with someone so stubborn. Seo stands up from his seat and tells her that, as far as he knows, there's nothing wrong with Haoyu. He explains that Haoyu is upset with him because of something he did, and she's just a normal person. He leaves with the food, wishing her a safe trip home. At Haoyu's house, Seo is outside begging her to come out. He tells her he has something for her. She refuses to open the door, so he decides to leave the food beside her door, telling her to come and get it herself. Standing outside the building, Seo is lost in thought. He realizes that Haoyu doesn't seem close to her family. He knew she wasn't fond of them, but he doesn't understand why. There's definitely something strange. He remembers what her mom said and wonders why someone would badmouth their daughter to a stranger. He's unsure, but he notices that whenever her family is mentioned, Haoyu either gets angry or avoids the topic. He doesn't know what to think. Seo still feels like there must be a reason why Haoyu hates her family so much. He looks up and sees her throwing away everything from the package her mother brought. He walks over to her and asks why she's doing that, saying she's wasting good food. As he holds her hands, he notices she's been crying. He asks her why she's crying, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she asks him why he hasn't left yet. He asks her again, and she loses her temper. She wonders if he thinks he'll understand, just because she tells him the reason. She tells him that since he left her first, whether she cries or not doesn't matter. He asks her why he wouldn't care. He tells her he knows he's done wrong many times, but it isn't fair for her to just leave him like that. She tries to leave, but he stops her, asking if they can talk for a bit. He wants to know if she really wants to end things with him. She says yes and questions if he expects her to pretend nothing happened. She tells him she doesn't need his excuses, that she's made up her mind, and he should go. He lets her go and tells her he understands, saying he won't come looking for her again. She goes into the building, and he starts to cry. He wonders why he's crying and tries to calm himself. As he looks at the bin, he notices something inside. The next day at Haoyu's office, she keeps thinking about what happened last night. She had tried hard to forget about her mother, but now she really wants to forgive her, even if it's just for a moment. It feels so unbearably painful. She flashes back to when they used to live together. Her mother had given her crabs to eat, but after she ate them, Haoyu's body started itching. Her mother got really angry and said if Haoyu didn't want to eat it, she shouldn't. She complained that Haoyu was different from her sister, and wouldn't appreciate anything precious. While she's thinking about this, Haoyu collapses onto the table. She is quickly rushed to the emergency room of a hospital. After she's settled into a bed, the doctor tells her mother that Haoyu has a very strong allergy to certain foods. He says that if they had brought her in later, it could have been very dangerous for her. He advises her mother not to serve Haoyu shellfish in the future. Her mother gets upset and says that no one in their family has this kind of allergy, and that it's strange because her other daughter eats crab without any problem. The doctor explains that allergies can develop even if there's no family history. He suggests doing a specific test, but her mother immediately says she doesn't have the money for that. Her mother, frustrated and angry, vents her feelings at Haoyu. She says that Haoyu is very strange, that she looks just like her father and now has a crab allergy. She yells at Haoyu, telling her to wake up and do whatever she wants, whether to stay home or go out. Haoyu lies weakly in bed, and other patients and visitors watch in surprise at her mother's behavior. Back to the present, Haoyu is now thankful that her mother took her to the emergency room right away, but she realizes that a caring parent or family member wouldn't have left her alone while she was sick or embarrassed her publicly. This makes it hard for her to forget what happened. She wonders why her mother would even bring something like crab in the first place. Just then, Solyi interrupts her thoughts by calling her name. Solyi asks if she was alone in the office during lunch. When Haoyu asks why, Solyi explains that her wallet is missing after lunch and asks if Haoyu has seen it. Haoyu looks at Solyi and remembers what she said that day. She wonders if Solyi is still holding a grudge. Haoyu tells her that she didn't see the wallet. Solyi asks if anyone came close to her seat, but Haoyu says no. Solyi seems doubtful, and Haoyu starts to get annoyed. Just then, Yerin steps in and says she was in the office during lunch too. Solyi doesn't believe her at first, but Yerin explains that she came back early after leaving and skipped lunch. Solyi looks defeated and decides to search elsewhere for her missing wallet. Yerin suggests they go have coffee together. While they are having coffee, Haoyu thanks Yerin for helping out. She says that since she was the only one in the office, she might have been a suspect for the missing wallet. Yerin reassures her that no one would believe she took it and suggests that Solyi might have misplaced it somewhere and got upset for no reason. Haoyu insists that she shouldn't lie, as it could cause problems later. Yerin then asks why Haoyu didn't come to work for 2 days. Haoyu replies that she just felt a bit unwell. Yerin asks Haoyu to be honest and guesses that she missed work because she caught her boyfriend cheating. Haoyu is surprised and asks how Yerin knew. Yerin says she's good at reading relationship issues because of her own experiences. While they are talking, the director walks by and tells Yerin that they should have lunch together next time. Yerin apologizes, saying she had to cancel today's lunch. Haoyu asks if Yerin really didn't have lunch with the director, and Yerin confirms it. She explains that there are rumors about her relationship with the director, so she's trying to be careful. Haoyu advises her not to get too close to the director, as it could hurt her reputation. Yerin explains that she needs to stay close to the director because her mother is the head of the household and she needs to secure her job. Haoyu didn't realize Yerin had such issues since she always seemed so cheerful. Yerin tries to cheer Haoyu up, telling her not to worry and that, from her experience, it's not a big deal. She adds that Haoyu is pretty and will definitely find someone better. Later, after work, Haoyu thinks about what Yerin said earlier. She remembers when she was in the hospital, after collapsing from malnutrition. Seo had apologized while she was in bed, telling her to eat properly when she got out, saying it's embarrassing to be malnourished in this day and age. She had expected him to be angry with her. But as he held her hand, she noticed he was trembling, and she wondered why he seemed more scared than she was. When someone says she's a good person, she starts to think Seo is even better. She gets home and is about to open her door when she thinks about how, if it weren't for him, she wouldn't know what it's like to care about someone and be cared about. She never knew that feeling before, and it feels like a rare fortune she might never have again. She realizes now that she might have held onto a love she didn't deserve for too long. It's time to let go. As she's about to close the door after stepping inside, someone stops her. She turns around and sees her brother. He smiles and says, "Long time no see." It's the next evening. Seo is sitting outside her building, feeling the cold. It's really tough being out here on Christmas Eve. He takes out the restaurant tickets he had saved. If they were still together, they would have gone there. His thoughts drift back to what he saw in the trash yesterday. He wonders if Haoyu's mother knows she's very allergic to crabs and shellfish. Just touching them makes her skin red and swollen. Someone walks towards him. It's Haoyu. She asks him why he's back after he said he wouldn't come again. He apologizes for giving her address to her mother. She tells him it's okay, saying her mother would have found her anyway, even without his help. Seo gently pushes her hair back and notices a mark on her neck. He asks her what happened, but she tries to brush it off, telling him not to worry. He insists, saying she's usually so careful that she wouldn't bump into anything. So, he knows someone must have hurt her. He asks her who did it. Haoyu finally explains that her brother, who she hasn't seen in 10 years, showed up asking for money. He had hit his girlfriend and came to ask her for bail money. She tells Seo that she was so embarrassed she didn't want to mention it before. She adds that it's not that she avoids people like her brother, but they don't treat her like family. Seo asks her why she didn't tell him from the start. He says he would have helped if he knew. Hao-yu asks if he still doesn't understand why she leaves her messenger profile picture blank. She explains that he doesn't know what it's like to have a family that oppresses and causes pain. She wonders how he could have understood or helped her when he wasn't in the same situation. Seo says he's starting to understand, but he didn't know it was this bad. He asks how he's supposed to know everything when she never mentioned it. Hao-yu replies that she just wanted him to understand without having to say anything. She says that her mother hates her because of who she is. She mentions that her mother guessed Seo was cheating because of how messed up she is. Seo looks at her, unable to respond. Hao-yu pulls her hand away from him. He asks if she's going to keep doing this forever, if she's just feeling sorry for herself. She says yes and starts walking away. He tells her to take care of herself. Hao-yu goes home to find it in disarray. She lies on her bed, thinking about what Seo said. She realizes that she feels so sorry for herself, it's as if she's going to collapse. Hao-yu feels sorry for herself, even more so as she lies there feeling empty and like she doesn't deserve to live. She remembers how her mother used to ignore her at home and focus all her attention on her brother. When the doorbell rings, she doesn't want to answer, thinking it's Seo. She hopes that if she ignores it, he'll just get tired and leave. The knocking continues, and a neighbor complains about the noise. She heads toward the door, but before she can reach it, it opens. It's her mother and brother. They come in, and her mother asks if she ate the crab she brought. They start asking a lot of questions about the house, commenting on how big it is. Hao-yu is disappointed. She wasn't expecting them, but since they know where she lives now, she figures they might become regular visitors. She wonders why she's so disappointed that it isn't Seo at the door. The house is a mess, and her mom can't help but ask what's been going on. Her brother quietly signals her not to say anything. Her mom then wonders if she's eating well. Hao-yu knows her mom doesn't really care, so she asks why they are visiting, since they are not close. Her mom admits she's been thinking a lot. She says she knows she's been hard on her but doesn't want to lose touch because they are family. Hao-yu questions if they really are family, recalling how she used her scholarship money to buy things for her brother, even though her mom pushed her to get a job instead of going to college. Hao-yu looks at her mom and asks what kind of family ignores her needs. Her mom turns to her brother, scolding him for always causing trouble and mentioning that he came asking for money because he hit someone again. Her mom is shocked and asks if it's true. Her brother is angry that she spoke up after he signaled her to stay quiet. Hao-yu asks if her mom is here for money again, wondering if she's been robbed or spent it all on expensive bags and drinks. Her mom grabs her hand, begging for forgiveness and promising to make things right if Hao-yu forgives her. Hao-yu thinks back to when she was 20 and felt very lonely after leaving home. She cried all day in her tiny, moldy rooftop room. She thinks that if her mother and sister had come looking for her back then, she might have gone back home, even if it meant living her life as a lonely stranger. She wonders if she would have become a better person by feeling relieved to have a family. But now, she questions why it took so long. She decides that to test her mother's sincerity, she needs to confront her brother. Hao-yu calls her brother over and asks if he's still on probation, noting how well he looks. Her mother is furious at this and calls her out. Hao-yu expects her mother to tell her she never loved her. She thinks her mother should stop apologizing and just be honest, even if it means cursing and being a bad person till the end. It's too late for apologies now. As she expected, her mother starts scolding her, calling her a crazy girl and questioning if she has some mental problem for talking to her brother like that. Hao-yu isn't surprised, she knew her mother would react this way. Her brother storms over to her, threatening to beat her to death this time, saying that yesterday's punishment wasn't enough. Haoyu starts trembling as her brother grabs her, and she begins to cry. As she looks up, she sees Seo walking in. He immediately pushes her brother away, asking if he's the bully. Seo hits him, and a violent struggle breaks out between them. After Seo leaves Haoyu, he returns to his house and lies down on his bed, staring up at the ceiling. His mind is filled with thoughts about their conversation. He keeps replaying her words, how she explained that it would be hard for him to understand because his family is different from hers. It's not like he doesn't want to understand, but he knows it's true. His house is warm, spacious, and filled with love, even when there are arguments. His family always manages to work things out, and there's never any real tension. He had everything he needed growing up, and he could try anything he wanted. His life has always been clear and simple to him. But for Haoyu, it's different. Her world seems so much more complicated and painful, and Seo doesn't know how to help her. He wants to talk to her, to say something comforting, but every time he tries, the words won't come out. He's scared that whatever he says will make things worse, that trying to comfort her will only hurt her more. He feels stuck, unsure of what to do. As Seo lies there, thinking, his mind flashes back to the injury he noticed on her neck earlier. That small mark suddenly fills him with a deep sense of worry. He sits up quickly, his heart racing. What if something's wrong? What if she's in trouble right now? He can't shake the feeling that he needs to check on her, to make sure she's okay. Without hesitating, Seo gets out of bed and starts getting dressed. He throws on his shoes and rushes to the door, determined to see her. As he heads out, his mother catches sight of him and frowns. "Where are you going at this hour?" she asks, sounding concerned. It's late, and she's been worried about him lately. Seo just mumbles that he's going out for a bit, and doesn't stop to explain further. His mother watches him leave, a bit unsettled by his behavior. She turns to her husband and says, "I'm worried about him. He's been acting strange recently." But Seo's father waves it off, telling her not to worry. "He's fine. Let's just eat dinner and watch some TV," he says, trying to reassure her. Still, his mother can't shake the uneasy feeling. Seo hurries through the streets, his mind racing. He feels a growing sense of urgency, his heart pounding harder with each step. When he finally reaches Haoyu's house, something immediately feels wrong. The front door is wide open. Seo freezes for a moment, his instincts screaming that something is off. He quickly steps inside, his eyes scanning the room. And that's when he sees it. Haoyu's brother is standing over her, hitting her. Seo's blood boils in an instant. Without thinking, he rushes toward them and grabs her brother, trying to pull him away. But before Seo can do anything, the brother turns and shoves him, landing a solid punch that sends Seo stumbling back. The blow catches Seo off guard, and for a second, he's dazed. Haoyu's mother, who had been in the room, gasps in shock. She hadn't expected anyone to walk in, much less for this to turn into a fight. Haoyu, still struggling, looks at Seo with wide, frightened eyes. Seo's shock quickly turns to rage. He looks at Haoyu's brother and realizes with sickening clarity that this is the person who's been hurting her, causing all that pain. Without hesitating, Seo launches himself at her brother, punching him hard. Her brother falls to the ground, but Seo doesn't stop. He hits him again and again, his anger pouring out with each strike. All of the frustration, fear, and helplessness he's felt comes crashing down, and he can't hold back. Haoyu's mother rushes over, horrified by what's happening. "Stop! Stop it," she yells, trying to pull Seo away from her son. She's panicked, not understanding why Seo is acting like this. "What are you doing? Why are you hitting my son? Are you crazy?" she cries, her voice filled with fear and confusion. "What kind of person are you? Do you think your parents would be proud of you for doing something like this?" Seo barely hears her. He's too caught up in the moment, too consumed by his anger and the need to protect Haoyu. He can't let this go on any longer. As her mother keeps shouting, Seo's hands finally slow down, but he's still shaking, his breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. He looks down at Haoyu's brother, who is now lying on the floor, stunned and bleeding. The room is filled with a tense, heavy silence. Haoyu's mother looks at Seo in shock, her eyes wide and full of fear, while Haoyu just stands there, frozen, tears streaming down her face. Seo takes a step back, his heart still racing. He looks at Haoyu, his mind spinning, unsure of what to say or do next. The reality of what just happened starts to sink in, and a cold wave of guilt washes over him. The mother, still in shock, brings up how she noticed Seo's rude behavior at the cafe, especially toward the older people. She then looks at Haoyu, questioning why she's standing there silently while her brother is getting beaten up, implying she should step in. Haoyu remains quiet for a moment, but her silence is heavy. When she finally speaks, she cuts through the tension, asking her mother what she did when her brother was beating her. The question catches her mother off guard, and she quickly responds defensively, insisting she would never let that happen, claiming no parent would allow their child to be hurt. But Haoyu isn't satisfied with the answer. She steps forward, her voice full of frustration as she questions why her mother has never been on her side. Why she never asked her how she felt, or what happened when her brother lashed out. Her mother shifts uncomfortably, brushing off the question by saying this isn't the right time to discuss such things. Instead, she demands her son report Seo to the police, making it clear that's her main concern. At this point, Haoyu's anger breaks through, all the resentment she's bottled up spilling out. She accuses her mother of caring only about her brother, never about her, even though they share the same blood. She wonders aloud how her mother can be so indifferent to her pain, to all the times her brother hurt her. She continues, her emotions raw, admitting that she's spent her life trying to please her mother, but has never felt loved in return. She asks why her mother shows nothing but love for her brother, leaving her feeling unwanted. Her mother's expression hardens, dismissing her outburst. She suggests, with a biting tone, that maybe Haoyu would be happier if she finished off her brother herself. She then adds something even more hurtful, saying she should have left Haoyu behind at the orphanage, or put her in a mental hospital long ago. The words cut deep, leaving Haoyu stunned and shattered, her worst fears confirmed in that cruel moment. Haoyu feels a surge of pain and disbelief, her tears falling uncontrollably as her mother's cruel words sink in. Deep down, the thought of killing her brother crosses her mind, but not because she wants revenge, she just wants everything to stop. She realizes now that her mother's bias is not for any special reason, and in that moment, she wishes she were adopted. As she stands there, trying to suppress the storm of emotions inside her, she finally speaks. She tells her mother that they all grew up learning the same lessons, implying that her mother's way of thinking has shaped them all. She then says bitterly that if someone like her really wanted to change their fate, seducing a rich man would be the easiest way out. Her mother, unfazed, snaps back, telling her that she should be thankful for lowering herself enough so that she doesn't deceive someone like Seo. She adds, coldly, that Haoyu should consider it as the price she pays for being born and raised by her. She continues, blaming Haoyu for all the trouble she's brought into her life, and says that she'll pretend none of this ever happened, as long as Haoyu keeps her distance. While the tension builds, Seo resumes hitting her brother, asking Haoyu what she expects him to do now. Her mother becomes frantic, terrified for her son's safety. Seo looks at her, his voice calm but firm, and asks if she wants to leave quietly or watch her precious son die right here. The room falls silent, and the weight of his words hangs in the air. Haoyu, unable to bear it any longer, tugs at Seo's clothes, begging him to stop. She pleads, saying she just wants everything to end, the fighting, the pain, it all has to stop. Seo pauses, then throws her brother aside and turns to her mother, telling her not to hesitate if she wants to report him to the police. He adds that no matter what she does, he will make sure she never lays a hand on Haoyu again. With that, he slams the door as he and Hao-yu leave the house. Outside, her mother shouts after them, furious. She asks Seo what makes him think he can get away with hitting her son like that. She then turns to Hao-yu, seething with anger, and warns her that she won't allow her to live in peace. She yells that people like her deserve to be punished for their actions, leaving Hao-yu feeling even more broken as they walk away. Inside, Seo urges Hao-yu to start packing her belongings, telling her to take everything she needs right away. He explains that they don't know when her mother and brother will return, so he'll come back later for the rest. He suggests she stay in a hotel for a while until they can find a new place for her to live. As he helps her pack, Hao-yu turns to him, confused, and asks why he's doing so much for her. She tells him not to put in so much effort, because she won't be able to repay him for his kindness. Seo looks at her and says that no matter what mistakes she's made, he's not giving her this chance so she can try to repay him. But Hao-yu, overwhelmed with emotion, tells him that he's only doing this because he feels guilty. Tears start to fall as she admits that she's the most pathetic person in the world, and he must realize that by now, especially after everything that's happened. She goes on, saying that all he feels for her is pity, and guilt is the only reason he's trying to protect her. Seo, clearly hurt by her words, asks why she's thinking like that. He wants to know why she's feeling this way, why she's saying these things about herself. He tells her she has no idea what feelings he truly has for her. Hao-yu, convinced she knows the truth, responds that it's obvious, someone like him could never love someone like her. Without hesitation, Seo pulls her close, silencing her doubts with a deep, tender kiss, showing her with his actions what words can't express. She returns the kiss, and soon they begin to make out. As they hold each other close, Seo tells her that he could give her 100 reasons why he loves her, but none of that really matters. He tells her that she's his tender spot, the one person he loves deeply and sincerely, and that his love for her has been true from the beginning. He holds her hand tightly and says he still loves her, no matter who she is or what has happened. Tears roll down her cheeks as she asks him to repeat himself. He does, over and over, reassuring her, and they continue their intimate moment, lost in each other. The next morning, it's Christmas, and they are still lying together in bed. The morning light filters through the window, and she quietly speaks, telling him that from the start, it never made sense to her that he liked her. She says he's so responsible, that she sometimes wonders if he confused his sense of duty with love. She wonders aloud if he stayed with her all this time not because of love, but because he felt he couldn't leave. Seo listens and replies that her thoughts make sense, that especially for people like them, the longer they've been together, the harder it is to always love with the same intensity. He admits he's not trying to excuse his mistakes and that everything is his fault, she did nothing wrong. He tells her that if she'll let him, all he wants is to stay by her side. She looks at him and asks if it will be okay if she causes him trouble in the future, now that he knows everything she tried to hide. She says she won't try to conceal anything from him anymore. She asks him if he's really sure he's ready for everything that comes next. He touches the bruise on his face, feeling the pain throb lightly under his fingers. He replies that he's not entirely confident it won't affect him, but he'll give it his best shot. She turns to examine the wound more closely, concern flickering in her eyes, and asks if he's ever hit anyone like that before, adding that he seemed to hit really well for a first-timer. He smiles, a bit sheepishly, and tells her that this was indeed his first time. She lets out a small laugh, the tension easing a bit between them, and says that it was a relief at least, admitting that she has always wanted to hit Hisu like that at least once. The thought makes her feel lighter, and she appreciates the moment. He chuckles and replies that it's good to hear, feeling a sense of camaraderie and understanding between them. They share a brief look, and suddenly the playful atmosphere turns more serious. Then, they begin to kiss again, slowly at first, but soon they're caught up in a passionate make-out session, losing track of everything else around them. Time passes, and before they realize it, the year has changed. The holiday decorations come down, and life returns to normal, but everything feels a little different now. Aside from the hectic rush of moving into their new house, nothing else really changes for them. They continue to share meals together, often experimenting with new recipes, trying to make their new place feel like home. They greet each other in the morning with sleepy smiles and warm embraces, exchanging little wishes for a good day ahead, and say their goodbyes before heading off to work. On weekends, they cozy up on the couch, binge-watching their favorite TV shows, laughing at silly moments, and enjoying each other's company as they talk about everything and anything. In the rhythm of these simple, everyday moments, the wounds they carried start to heal, slowly fading with time, as their daily lives go on. One day at Seo's workplace, there's a buzz of excitement as a new team leader is introduced, Park Yoon-jong. As Seo listens to the introduction, he can't help but feel puzzled by why the company would bring in a new team leader so late in the year. It feels strange to change leadership right when things are settling down. As the team leader makes his remarks, he glances in Seo's direction, and Seo's heart sinks when he hears him make a comment about how surprising it is to see someone like him working here. Park Yoon-jong raises his voice, wondering out loud if Seo was picked up in a bar, adding that Seo looks like a playboy and probably didn't even serve in the military. Seo shifts uncomfortably in his seat, trying to process the words aimed at him. He wonders if those remarks are genuinely meant for him, feeling a mix of confusion and annoyance bubbling inside. The new team leader continues his speech, urging everyone to work hard for the company's success, no matter their gender, as if he's trying to cover up the insult he just made. Seo tries to tune out the noise, but it lingers in his mind. Meanwhile, Seung-hee stands quietly in the room, her hands shaking noticeably. She can feel the tension in the air and sees Seo's discomfort. Manager Jong notices her reaction and takes a step closer, clearly concerned for her. He gently asks if she's okay, his voice low and soothing. Seung-hee nods slightly but doesn't meet his gaze, her thoughts racing. She wishes she could say something to defend Seo, but the words get caught in her throat. The atmosphere feels thick with uncertainty, and the new team leader doesn't seem to notice the discomfort he has caused. Seo, on the other hand, is determined to brush off the comments and focus on doing his job well, but inside, he knows he'll have to face this new challenge head-on. At the smoking area, the male lead stands outside with his seniors, taking a break and having a smoke. He looks at them and asks if they noticed that the new team leader was directing those comments at him earlier. He feels confused and a little uneasy, wondering if he did something wrong to make the new guy target him like that. Chief No, who has been in the company for a while, replies calmly that he didn't do anything wrong. He explains that the new team leader is actually known for being a jerk at the headquarters. Curious, the male lead asks what Chief No means by that. Chief No shares a story about a friend of his who works at the headquarters. He says that the new team leader, Park, was demoted to their branch after getting into trouble for harassing an employee. The other seniors listen closely, intrigued by the gossip. Manager Shin jumps in, asking what exactly Chief No means by harassing. Chief No leans back, taking a drag from his cigarette, and explains that there was an employee at the headquarters who made a small mistake, and for no good reason, Manager Park targeted him. He goes on to say that the manager yelled at this poor employee for 4 long hours. The male lead's eyes widen in shock as he hears this. Chief No continues, explaining that the employee eventually collapsed from the stress, and had to be rushed to the emergency room. It's a scary thought. Chief No then adds that Manager Park had connections at the college with the sales director, which is why he wasn't fired for his actions. Instead, he just got moved to their branch. The male lead feels uneasy hearing this. He knows the company can be ruthless, and he wonders if he might be on the new team leader's bad side too. He asks Chief No, "Do you think I'm also in trouble with him?" Chief No shrugs, saying he might be, which only makes the male lead more worried. He thinks about what this means for him, and what he should do next. The chief sees the concern on his face and tells him that there's really nothing he can do except endure it for now. He advises him that quitting shouldn't even cross his mind. It feels heavy, and the male lead knows he has to stay strong, even if the situation seems tough ahead. The chief glances over at Manager Jong and asks why he's so quiet today. Usually, Manager Jong is the first one to speak up when they talk about issues at work. Manager Jong takes a moment to think and then replies that he noticed something strange about Seung-hee earlier. He mentions that she suddenly started shaking, which gets everyone's attention. They all agree that they saw her looking uneasy and begin to wonder why she would shake like that out of nowhere. One of the seniors suggests that it might be because of the new team leader. Another senior wonders if maybe she has a fever, but no one really knows for sure. The male lead sits quietly, lost in thought, as he considers his own situation. He feels a bit uneasy because he thinks his future at the company is now in the hands of this new team leader. It's frustrating for him, but he decides he won't let it bother him too much. Instead, he starts thinking about what they might eat for dinner later. Later that evening, when he gets home, he walks into the kitchen and is shocked to see a huge pile of dirty dishes stacked up in the sink. He can't believe it and wonders aloud why there are so many dishes to wash, especially since he only skipped doing them for 2 days. His girl hears him and responds playfully, reminding him that she has always told him to wash the dishes right after they eat. But he never listens to her advice. Feeling tired from his long day, he collapses onto the bed and pulls her close to him. He sighs deeply and tells her how much he really doesn't want to go to work the next day. The thought of facing the new team leader makes him anxious because he feels like no matter what he does, the man seems to dislike him. She can see that he is worried, so she tries to comfort him. She tells him not to stress too much because this tough time will pass eventually. She gives him a gentle smile and wishes him good night, and he smiles back and wishes her the same. As they settle down for the night, she says she is going to read a little more before sleeping. He tells her playfully to start sleeping or else he will have to make her. He reaches out and tries to tickle her, making her laugh. But she quickly tells him to stop because it tickles too much. It's now past 3 a.m., and while he sleeps peacefully beside her, she finds herself wide awake. She can't help but feel a bit restless, so she reaches for his phone that's lying on the bedside table. Out of curiosity, she begins to scroll through his messages. She knows that they didn't really resolve the conversation they had earlier, and a small part of her feels uneasy about it. She wonders why she feels the need to look through his messages when she knows there shouldn't be any problems between them. She thinks about their earlier discussion and feels a mix of emotions. It makes her question things that she hadn't thought about before. Even though they are close, she can't shake off the feeling that there is still something unsaid between them. She glances over at him, still sleeping soundly, and hopes that whatever it is can be talked about when the time is right. The quiet of the night surrounds them, and she keeps reading through the messages, feeling a bit of relief at knowing that their bond is still strong despite the troubles at work. Back then, she wanted to act like the incident didn't matter. The occasional feelings of anxiety were something she thought she could handle. As long as she ignored those feelings, everything seemed fine. But now, she drops his phone on the bed and wonders why she wakes up every morning feeling like this. She tells herself it's just work stuff anyway. She touches her head and notices a throbbing pain, probably a headache. Feeling uncomfortable, she leaves the bed and heads to the bathroom, feeling the urge to throw up. The noise of her being sick wakes him up. He gets out of bed and walks to the bathroom, concerned. He sees her position and his heart races. He asks her why she is still awake. She replies that she thinks the dinner wasn't good for her, explaining that this is why she's feeling nauseous and has a headache. He walks over to her and frowns, realizing they don't have any medicine at home. He asks if he should go outside to buy some for her. She quickly shakes her head and says no, insisting that she feels better now after throwing up. She tells him that she's just going to brush her teeth and then go back to bed. But before she can reach for her toothbrush, he quickly puts toothpaste on it for her and offers to brush her teeth. She smiles and tells him that it's okay, she can do it by herself. He insists that she should let him help since he is already offering. He has been waiting for a moment like this to take care of her. After a moment of thought, she agrees, and he gently brushes her teeth. She feels a little better knowing he's there to help her. After they finish, he leads the way back to their bedroom. He asks her if she can walk back on her own. She replies that she feels a bit weak, but she can still manage to walk. Suddenly, he surprises her by picking her up in his arms. She exclaims, "What are you doing? We are not far from the room." He shrugs and teases her, asking why she's overreacting. She laughs softly, feeling a little embarrassed, but also touched by his concern. She leans her head against his shoulder as he carries her back to the bedroom, grateful for his kindness. At that moment, he looks around and notices where he dropped her phone on the table. He picks it up and, looking at her, says that he just wanted to see her face, which is why he decided to carry her. She playfully tells him to put her down because she insists that she can walk by herself. But instead of letting her go, he leans down and kisses her softly, making her smile. While she is still in his arms, she suddenly remembers that she needs to put his phone back in the right place. She tells him this, and he gently sets her down, still holding her close for a moment. The next day at his workplace, he discovers something surprising: she has been going through his phone. When he sees her looking at it, he feels a little shocked, but thinks it should be okay for her to look at anything she wants to see. After all, he trusts her completely and believes there is nothing hidden in his phone that would cause any problems. He has tried to forget about the incident with Seung-hee, saying to himself that he doesn't remember it. But as he thinks about what happened, he realizes that something that shouldn't have happened actually did happen that day. He feels uneasy about it, but he decides not to bring it up now. What matters most to him is that their fragile relationship, which has started to rekindle, stays strong and doesn't fall apart again. He wants to keep everything good between them, and not let anything get in the way. As he walks around the office, he spots the new team leader, and greets him with a friendly smile. The team leader responds with his own smile, and says that he would like to talk with him in the meeting room for a while. He mentions that there's a lot he wants to discuss, which makes the male lead a bit nervous. He wonders why the team leader wants to talk to him so much after just one day in the office. When they enter the meeting room, the team leader sits down across from him. He looks serious as he begins to speak. The team leader tells him that he has gone through all the files he received from his predecessor, and has noticed something concerning. He explains that the sales in Store A have been low ever since the male lead took over the team. The male lead listens carefully, feeling a mix of anxiety and curiosity. He wonders what this means for him, his work, and how it might affect his standing in the company. He feels a knot tightening in his stomach, worrying about how he can improve the situation, and what the team leader will expect from him moving forward. The male lead sits in the meeting room, feeling a bit tense. He replies to the team leader that he hasn't been in charge of that store for very long. The team leader raises an eyebrow and asks him how long he has actually been with the company. He remembers a time when things felt easier and lighter, and he really longs to feel that way again. Meanwhile, at our girl's office, she is having coffee with her friend Yerin. She smiles and tells Yerin that she is finally getting the hang of all the different tasks at work. She adds that from now on, she should just submit her work for approval instead of asking for confirmation from Yerin every time. Yerin looks happy and says it's great that our girl is finally doing well in her job. Then our girl suddenly remembers something and asks Yerin if she has told anyone about her boyfriend cheating on her. She adds that she thought the news would definitely spread as a rumor. Yerin looks a bit disappointed and asks our girl how she can think that way. Our girl says she has been extra careful because of Yerin's advice. Yerin then asks if our girl sees her as a naive person. Our girl quickly apologizes, saying that's not what she meant at all. Yerin responds that if our girl really feels sorry for her, then she should push her harder until she becomes a full employee. Our girl smiles and tells her that she doesn't have that kind of power. She looks at the clock and realizes that their lunch break is almost over. She suggests that they should go back inside now, because they don't want to be late. As our girl and Yurin walk back to the office, they hear loud shouting coming from outside. An elderly woman is yelling at one of their colleagues, asking about someone. The colleague is trying to calm her down, but the lady is not listening at all. She keeps asking how no one knows where the person is and wonders if they are all in on it together, like some kind of gang. Curious about the commotion, Yurin and our girl decide to go inside and check it out. When they step in, they see the lady getting more and more upset. As soon as the elderly woman sees our girl, she marches over to her without hesitation and slaps her hard across the face. The shock of it hits our girl, leaving her momentarily speechless. Yurin gasps, and the atmosphere around them turns tense as everyone watches the scene unfold. That evening, Haoyu and Seo are having dinner with Jae-yun. Jae-yun looks at them and asks when they plan to get married. They both answer at the same time, but their answers are different. Seo, the male lead, says they will get married next year at the latest. Haoyu, on the other hand, says that it is still a very long time away. They both look surprised by their different answers, and Jae-yun raises his eyebrows in shock, wondering how they can think so differently about it. After a moment of awkward silence, Jae-yun breaks it by saying he heard there was some kind of commotion on the 6th floor of their office earlier that day. He says that everyone has been talking about it. Haoyu looks surprised and asks if the rumor spread all the way down to the 1st floor. Seo then asks her what happened at work earlier. Haoyu remembers the incident with the elderly lady who slapped Yurin, but she feels a bit awkward talking about it, especially right here at dinner. So, she decides to downplay it and tells them it's nothing, saying the rumors are exaggerated. She laughs lightly, trying to make it seem like it's not a big deal. Jae-yun shifts the topic and asks Haoyu how her feet are, checking if they aren't swollen. She quickly replies that it's better now, and that it's been a while since it happened. Just as Jae-yun is about to ask about her shoes, Haoyu suddenly coughs, pretending like something is stuck in her throat. Seo looks at her with concern and asks if she's okay. She asks him to get her a napkin and some water, and he nods and gets up to fetch it, leaving her alone with Jae-yun. As Seo leaves, Jae-yun asks Haoyu if she's really okay. She replies that she doesn't think he should talk about the shoes in front of Seo. Jae-yun looks confused and asks why, wondering if he said something wrong. Haoyu shrugs, saying it's not a big deal, but she still feels uneasy. Suddenly, she has a flashback to 3 years ago, when Seo bought her those shoes. She remembers how happy she was to receive them. The memory brings a smile to her face, but it also reminds her of the feelings attached to them. It's a sunny day, and Seo comes home feeling really excited. He walks through the door with a big box in his hands, and his face is lit up with a smile. He can't wait to show Haoyu what he bought. He opens the box and reveals a stunning pair of shoes. Haoyu looks at the shoes, her eyes wide with surprise. She asks Seo why he bought her shoes, and he beams at her, explaining that he got them to celebrate his first paycheck. He tells her he has always wanted to buy these shoes for her because he knows how much she loves nice things. Haoyu takes a closer look at the shoes and says they are really pretty, but she wonders why he would spend his money on something like this for her. Seo responds that it's a gift, and he just wanted to make her happy. Then, he suggests that she should try the shoes on. Haoyu agrees, and Seo helps her slip her feet into the shoes. As she stands up, he smiles and tells her they look great on her. But as she takes a few steps, Haoyu starts to feel uncomfortable. The shoes pinch her feet, making her feel uneasy. Still, she thinks about how much effort Seo put into buying them for her, and she decides to wear them for their date that day, even if her feet hurt a little. They go out and walk around, and as they stroll through the park, people start to notice Haoyu's shoes. They compliment her, saying how beautiful they are, which makes Seo feel really proud. He walks a bit taller, happy that his gift is getting such good attention. However, after a while, Hao-yu suddenly blurts out that she doesn't like the shoes. Seo stops in his tracks, looking surprised and confused. He asks her why she didn't say anything before. Hao-yu feels frustrated and tells him that she doesn't understand why he would make her wear heels when they are planning to walk around all day on their date. She points out that he has never seen her wear heels before, and it seems strange for him to think she would want to wear them now. Seo tries to defend himself, saying he didn't force her to wear the shoes, it was her choice. Hao-yu feels annoyed at his response. She points to her heels and shows him her blistered feet, telling him that it hurts. She can't believe that he has been bragging about the shoes all day, but hasn't noticed how much pain they are causing her. Seo bends down to examine her blister, and he tells her that if she was going to be so upset about it, she should have just spoken up. Hao-yu snaps back, saying that he has been showing off all day, acting as if he is doing her a favor by buying the shoes. She feels hurt and frustrated, and it comes out in her words. Seo looks taken aback by her reaction and tells her to just say what she really wants. He says he is not a mind reader, and that he doesn't want to feel like he can't joke around with her anymore. The tension in the air grows thicker, as they start to exchange heated words. Hao-yu asks him if she has ever told him to buy shoes for her. She wonders why he keeps buying her things that she never asked for. To her, it feels so awkward and uncomfortable. Seo, feeling defensive, asks her what's so awkward about him wanting to give her nice things. He tells her that if she didn't want the shoes in the first place, she should have just said so instead of letting him think she liked them. Hao-yu thinks back to that moment when she decided to stop wearing those shoes. She pulls them off her feet and says that she doesn't want to wear them anymore. Seo quickly replies that she shouldn't wear them either. They both feel relieved because they made up after their little misunderstanding, but somehow, they forgot all about the shoes afterward. Now, back to the present, Hao-yu is telling Jae-yun about the whole story behind the shoes. She laughs a little and says that if Seo finds out she is wearing them again, he is going to tease her so much. It's even more embarrassing because she's wearing them because of Seung-hee. She can't believe this is happening. Jae-yun looks surprised by the story and comments that it sounds like a pretty trivial reason to feel so embarrassed. He wonders why it bothers her so much. Just as Hao-yu is about to respond, Seo comes back with a glass of water and a napkin. He sits down next to her and asks if she's feeling better now. Hao-yu smiles and says yes. Jae-yun looks at Seo and suddenly asks him where he got those shoes. Hao-yu is so shocked that she spits out her water. Seo laughs a little and replies that he bought them at the department store, but doesn't really remember exactly where. Then he asks Jae-yun why he wants to know. Jae-yun says that the shoes look comfy, and that he was thinking about getting a pair for himself too. At that moment, Seo's phone starts ringing. He looks at the caller ID, and complains out loud about who is calling. Hao-yu asks him who it is, and he replies that it's the team leader. He decides to step outside to take the call. Once he's gone, Hao-yu turns to Jae-yun and asks if he brought up the topic of the shoes on purpose. Jae-yun asks if she is talking about the shoes, and she tells him that they shouldn't focus too much on it. He looks at her for a moment and says that he just felt a little annoyed. Hao-yu is confused and wonders what he means. She feels like there's something on his mind that he's not sharing. Meanwhile, outside, Seo is still on the phone. He tells the caller that he will be available the next day. As he stands outside, he looks back inside and sees Hao-yu and Jae-yun talking closely. A thought crosses his mind, and he feels a little uneasy. Later, at home, Seo and Hao-yu are cuddling on the bed, and he is about to go to sleep. Hao-yu asks him why he is going to bed so early, especially since it is the weekend. She wonders if they aren't going to play games together. Seo replies that he has to get up early for work the next morning and tells her to go back to sleep, saying he will try not to wake her. Haoyu is surprised and comments that the new team leader is really strange. Seo agrees with her and adds that it can't be helped, he doesn't want to go to work either. He calls her name as if he wants to ask her something, but then he thinks better of it and tells her not to worry about it. Haoyu encourages him to tell her, but he insists that it's nothing. Then she asks him if he is bothered because Jae-yeon asked them about marriage earlier. He quickly says yes, and she tells him that her answer about marriage was just a humble brag. She explains that she can't really talk about marriage in front of someone who called off their engagement. Seo is surprised to hear that she didn't mean what she said. Haoyu laughs and teases him, saying he's so gullible. He tells her that he felt hurt at first when she answered that way, but then he thought about it more and realized it makes sense that she wouldn't be thinking about marriage right now. Haoyu reassures him that it's okay, and from now on, he can ask her anything like that without feeling shy or hesitant. She adds that what happened in the past is in the past, and she wants to go back to how they used to be. Seo replies with a simple okay. As they are talking, Haoyu gently touches his lips with her fingers. Then, he asks her how long she has been close to Jae-yeon. She is surprised by his question and asks him what he means by that. He tells her that he notices they seem close. She replies, asking why she would be close to Jae-yeon. Then, he asks her what they were talking about while he was outside. She thinks for a moment and decides to tell him the truth, because she's tired of hiding it. She asks him if he remembers when he bought her those shoes with his first paycheck. As she sits down to explain, she tells him to smile, but he refuses and apologizes. He then asks her why she suddenly decided to wear those shoes, saying there's no reason for her to wear dress shoes. She explains that it's because of Seung-hee. She remembers that when she first saw Seung-hee, the shoes she wore looked so pretty, and since those were the only shoes she had, she decided to try them on. She continues, saying that the shoes didn't really suit her, and she wasn't used to wearing them, so she ended up ruining them. She adds that's why she has blisters on her heels, and that she plans to get them repaired soon. He tells her to just throw the shoes away. She asks why she should throw them out, saying it would be a waste. She points out that she can get the heels fixed because they weren't cheap when she checked their prices. He reminds her that he bought her those shoes even though she didn't really need them. He says that if she hadn't been aware of Seung-hee, she probably wouldn't have worn those uncomfortable shoes again. He continues talking, saying that he hates the fact that he hurt her, even if it wasn't on purpose. He feels nothing but sorry about those shoes. She tells him it's a waste to throw them away, because he bought them with his first paycheck. He hugs her tightly and begs her to throw them out, promising to get her a new pair. She knows him well and understands that he must feel bad for her every single day. That's probably why he doesn't want to keep anything that reminds him of what happened. She feels the same way. So, she agrees to throw the shoes away, but reassures him that she's really okay now. She tells him that's why she can talk about Seung-hee so casually. She suggests that next time, they should go pick out shoes together because she didn't like the design of the ones he bought. The next morning, she wakes up alone in bed. She checks the time and realizes that he woke up earlier than she thought. When she tries to stand up, she feels pain in her muscles. They really went too far yesterday, and she regrets it now. She hopes the neighbors didn't hear them. She sits up and notices a note beside her. It's from him. He writes that he got her a sandwich, and even draws a little figure. She mutters to herself that he's really bad at drawing. She can't wait for him to come home. It feels like things are getting better between them, even if it's just a little bit. At the male lead's workplace, he walks into the office, mumbling about having to work on weekends. This is the same reason he quit his last job. As he steps into the office, his mind drifts back to the previous day. It is the first day that Haoyu opens up to him since they got back together. He knows he will feel guilty about every word she says from now on, but he is ready to take it all in. He wonders if it is really okay for him to feel this way. He looks at the team leader's desk and sees that it is empty. In his mind, he imagines the team leader ranting and getting angry. He thinks about how the team leader has made him work on the weekend on purpose. He mutters to himself that he served in the military too and silently curses the man in his heart. Suddenly, as he slams his hands on the desk, he hears a voice from under the table asking if anyone is there. He jumps in surprise. It is Seung-hee. She stands up, and he asks her what she is doing there, adding that she scared him. He feels relieved that he didn't say those angry thoughts out loud. She replies that she was looking for something and asks if he has seen her tumbler and cup. He shakes his head and says no. She comments that she thought so too, saying she shouldn't have asked. She says she will go check for it. While she talks, the things she was holding slip from her hand and scatter all over the floor. She tells him not to worry and that she will clean it up. As he walks away, he wonders why she is looking for her stuff at the team leader's desk. Later that evening, he comes home and announces that he is back. She asks him if he has eaten dinner yet. He replies that he has not and then hugs her. He tells her that today was tough for him. He says that he is annoyed because he had to work on the weekend and didn't even get to eat. She asks him why he is so late since he told her he would only be gone for a little while. He stays silent for a moment. Then she tells him to pretend he didn't hear her question. He finally replies that a new store opened, and they needed their company's products on display. The staff from headquarters was supposed to go, but they couldn't make it, so since he was in the office, he had to go instead. He takes out his phone and asks her if she wants to see some pictures, saying that he did an amazing job. He shows her a few photos, and she smiles at them. Then he asks her what she had for dinner, wondering if she just grabbed something quick like he did. He suggests that they should order delivery for dinner. As he walks away to look for the menu, she notices a scent of perfume on him, and it catches her off guard. She wonders where the smell is coming from. It's a new week at Ha-Yu's office. Yerin walks in with a big smile, greeting everyone cheerfully. She asks them how their weekends went, chatting with each person for a moment. Then she asks if anyone has seen our girl, and gets some directions. As she heads toward the meeting room, two of the staff start whispering behind her back, surprised she's still coming to work after what happened last week. They thought for sure she would quit after that embarrassment. Yerin reaches the meeting room and sees our girl already inside. She greets her warmly and asks if she had a nice weekend. They sit together and start talking about what happened last week. Our girl looks at Yerin and admits that she's felt foolish for a long time. She says she used to think she understood relationship problems because of her own experience. But now, she realizes she only saw it from one side. She was actually the woman on the other end. Yerin looks down, clearly feeling guilty and sad. Our girl goes on, telling Yerin she's glad she isn't trying to make excuses or convince her of anything. She adds that Yerin shouldn't ask her for work advice anymore. But before she can finish, Yerin interrupts with a surprising offer. She wants to buy our girl a drink later that night. Our girl is taken aback, but agrees. Later that evening, they meet up at a cozy cafe. Yerin seems excited, saying it's been a long time since she's gone out for a drink. She pours herself a glass and offers one to our girl, who politely turns it down, explaining that she has to drive home later. Yerin shrugs and decides to drink by herself, though she mentions that it's not as fun to drink alone. After a long stretch of silence, Yerin finally speaks up. She tells our girl that she knows she probably has a lot of questions, and says she's free to ask anything, she'll answer honestly. Our girl responds, telling her if there's anything she wants to say, she should just get it over with. She admits she's a bit uncomfortable, and wants this to be over quickly. Yerin, looking a bit hurt, asks why she's acting like this, wondering if she's trying to make her quit. Our girl replies calmly that she doesn't care whether Yerin stays or leaves. She's only interested in hearing what Yerin has to say. Yerin takes another sip of her drink, then quietly admits that it's true, she dated both the CEO and manager Huang. She looks at our girl and asks if she's not curious about why she did it. Our girl answers that it wouldn't really make a difference, even if she was curious. Yerin nods, agreeing that being a mistress to two married men doesn't really change anything. She keeps drinking, and our girl gently suggests she slow down. After a pause, Yerin starts to share more, saying that she wasn't always like this. One day, she just woke up and realized she'd become, well, trash. Our girl looks at her, unconvinced, and says things like that don't happen overnight. She suggests that something must have triggered her to start behaving this way. Yerin looks a bit lost and says she doesn't know, wondering aloud what the trigger could have been. She laughs bitterly and says maybe it's because only married men are nice to her. Or maybe it started in college, when she took her annoying friend's boyfriend. Or maybe it's just because she doesn't have a dad. Our girl notices Yerin is already drunk. She tells her that not everyone ends up like this just because they don't have a father. Yerin looks at her and snaps back, asking if her dad also cheated on her mom and disappeared without a trace. Our girl shakes her head and says no, it wasn't like that, he just passed away when she was young. Yerin sighs and says they are just excuses. She admits it's her fault, that she's not a good person. She even says she's been hit a few times before. Our girl thinks about that last part, realizing maybe that's why Yerin seemed so shameless after being slapped. Yerin keeps talking, saying that back then, she didn't really understand what she did wrong, so she didn't care. But this time, for some reason, she felt so ashamed she wanted to disappear. She starts to cry, saying being hit like that in front of everyone was humiliating, that she'd never felt so embarrassed. Our girl is caught off guard and asks why she's crying all of a sudden, gently telling her to calm down. Yerin hangs her head, and admits she didn't want her to find out any of this. She says it's just an excuse now, but she'd already planned on ending things with both men because of her. She remembers when our girl once told her she was a good person. She goes on, explaining that's why she tried to stay away, but she never expected manager Huang's wife would show up. She apologizes, saying she's truly sorry, that she knows she's let her down, and that's what hurts the most. Our girl looks at her and tells her she's apologizing to the wrong person. She should be apologizing to manager Huang's wife, not her. Yerin asks if she'll be forgiven if she does. Our girl says forgiveness isn't certain, but it's worth trying if she's ready to change her ways. Later that night, she's lying in bed next to Seo, lost in thought about what Yerin said earlier. After their conversation, she'd gotten up to pay the bill when Yerin had asked if she was going back to her boyfriend. She had shrugged it off, asking what that had to do with her. Yerin replied that she just wanted to give some advice since she had listened to her story, adding, with a hint of a joke, that relationships were her area of expertise. Yerin had gone on to say that all the men she dated reached out to her again after their wives or girlfriends found out about the affair. She explained that having an affair felt like a thrilling, addictive instant fix, saying it's like instant noodles, no one eats it just once. She warned her not to feel too comfortable just because Seo was treating her better than before, adding that guilt fades faster than she might think. Back in the present, she turns and looks at Seo, sleeping soundly. She wonders if Yerin's words are true. Will he end up like the men Yerin talked about? She's already decided to believe he won't, choosing to trust him, even though it's unsettling. She closes her eyes, hoping he'll somehow reassure her that her choice wasn't a mistake. After a while, she wakes up on the sofa in the living room, a bit disoriented. She doesn't even remember when she fell asleep there. She thinks maybe she came out to check something on her laptop. Then, she hears a noise. Confused, she stands and listens, realizing the sound is coming from the bedroom. She walks in and is shocked at what she sees. Seo is on the bed with Seung-hee. Her heart pounds as she demands to know what he's doing with her. She screams at him to stop, but he doesn't listen. She pleads with him, but he just responds that his body won't obey him. Then he turns to her, looking almost amused, and asks if she really believes he loves her. She's frozen in shock as he walks toward her, telling her he's not with her out of love, but out of pity. He says she's been abandoned by her family, her self-esteem is shattered, and yet she still acts so self-important. He adds, with a hint of cruelty, that watching her like this is heartbreakingly sad. She's left speechless, staring at him, unable to respond. Suddenly, she wakes up in bed, gasping for air. It was all a terrible dream. She turns to see Seo sleeping peacefully beside her, unaware of her distress. Kneeling over him, she stares down, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She reaches out, placing her hands around his neck, but she's far from okay. She remembers the day he fought with her brother. After that, she didn't know what to feel. He was so caring and wonderful, yet somehow, her feelings shifted. One moment, she loved him deeply, and the next, she couldn't stand him. She wonders if he felt that way with Seung-hee too, even though she's never seen anything to prove it. Still, the thought keeps coming back. Her mood swings all day, one minute she's fine, the next, she feels sick with doubt. But despite all of it, she still chooses him. In a life where she feels so little love, he's the only person she can hold on to. She's still leaning over him, watching him sleep peacefully. It all feels like nothing, like it will pass soon, so there's no need to make a fuss. She's already forgiven him, or at least she tells herself that. Then, like snapping out of a dream, she quickly pulls back, gasping. He's still lying there, unaware of her turmoil. She feels like she's losing her mind. The next morning, he's getting ready for work. He looks around and realizes he's out of lotion. She tells him to use hers, and he reaches for it on her dresser. As he's looking in the mirror, she notices a red mark on his neck. She asks if he's okay, and he seems confused until he spots the mark too. He shrugs it off, saying he must have scratched himself in his sleep. With a laugh, he adds that people joke about there being more mosquitoes in winter lately. She says nothing, just watching him. After a while, he's dressed and ready to go. He tells her he's heading out early, and she's surprised, asking why he's leaving so soon. Holding his coat, she points out that he usually doesn't leave at this time. He turns to her, a little surprised by her reaction. He tells her there's something urgent he needs to handle early, and he might be late tonight. She's quiet, just thinking, wondering why her mind is racing like this. He shows her a text from his team leader, who's asked him to prepare something before a big meeting. He explains it's been chaotic since 6 a.m., and he doesn't want to get scolded. That's why he has to go in early to finish it up. He chuckles, calling his team leader crazy, and saying he never knows what to expect next. As he heads toward the door, he tells her to have a good day at work, brushes her head in a gentle goodbye, totally messing up her neatly done hair. Outside the door, he touches the mark on his neck, relieved he didn't break under the pressure inside. On her way to her office, her phone rings. It's Yerin. She invites her out for drinks, mentioning a great rooftop spot she knows. Our girl is a bit surprised, and Yerin picks up on it, asking if she's still uncomfortable hanging out together. Later that evening, they are at the rooftop bar, sipping their drinks. Yerin brings up Mrs. Huang, saying it seems she's still staying quiet. She tells our girl she knows where Mrs. Huang lives, so she waited outside her place in the morning, thinking she might run into her. She even planned to keep going every day if she had to. But, by luck, she bumped into her this morning as she was heading to work. Yerin admits our girl was right, Mrs. Huang still refuses to forgive her. But she did say she felt a bit better after hitting her, getting out all her anger. Mrs. Huang even said she won't press charges for adultery, and Yerin seems almost relieved as she shares this. Yerin sighs, saying that Mrs. Huang told her there are plenty of other women besides her. She goes on, explaining that Mrs. Huang said no one has ever apologized to her, not even manager Huang himself. Maybe they all figured there was no point if forgiveness wasn't possible, so they just gave up. Yerin then admits to our girl that she's never really apologized for her actions either. She confesses that if she had planned to feel sorry, she wouldn't have done those things in the first place. Has she changed now? She wonders what good it does if she only starts changing after hurting so many people. Then she asks our girl if she hates her as much as she'd hate a woman who cheated on her own boyfriend. Our girl pauses before saying she honestly doesn't hate that woman much, since her boyfriend is the kind of guy anyone would want. He's kind, and people welcome him wherever he goes. Someone like her showing up was only a matter of time. She adds that the person she really hates is the one who crossed the line. No matter how hard he tried, he still ended up becoming someone she couldn't fully trust. If he had just held on a bit longer, maybe she could have changed too. She admits she did keep him waiting for too long. She tells Yerin that while she's disappointed in her, she doesn't hate her. Seeing Yerin try this hard makes her think that maybe she could believe in her boyfriend, too, that maybe he's trying sincerely, even though Yerin told her not to trust him. She raises her glass, saying she hopes they can start fresh and become better people from tomorrow onward. Yerin, smiling, cheers to that. Our girl reminds her to settle things with manager Huang, too. Yerin nods, saying she already did that the day Mrs. Huang slapped her. After a while, our girl helps Yerin into a taxi. Yerin insists she isn't too drunk and wants to keep drinking, but our girl shakes her head, reminding her that they have work tomorrow. She pleads with Yerin to just go in without any trouble starting tomorrow, because her nerves are shot. Yerin laughs, promises to be on her best behavior, and waves goodbye as the taxi pulls away. As our girl stands there, she feels completely drained. It's been ages since she drank this much, and she's debating whether to call a driver. But then, she changes her mind, she'd rather have someone she knows come get her. She picks up her phone and calls Seo. He answers, and she asks if he can pick her up, explaining that she ended up drinking more than she'd planned. He apologizes and says he can't, he's at a funeral. Jang Hyung's mother passed away, and he guesses she must not have seen the message he left earlier. She hears someone talking to him in the background, and he quickly says he has to go. He asks if she'll be okay to manage on her own or if he should call a taxi for her. She brushes it off, saying she'll figure it out and not to worry. He apologizes again, says he'll see her at home, and hangs up. She stares at her phone, feeling awkward now. She wonders if she complained for no reason, and feels a little embarrassed. But then, she reconsiders, waiting for him would have taken forever anyway. Still, a part of her feels upset. She can't quite put her finger on it, but she decides that whatever the reason, he should never refuse her request. How could he? If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 3. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.